evening, everyone. I'd like to call this meeting to order. Before we start with everything, I just want to reiterate that we're removing item 8B as was noted online, and we'll bring that back at our next meeting. Tonight, we have a presentation of colors by American Legion Post 58 Color Guard. So we'll please stand and remain standing following it, and then we'll have the pledge and the invocation. Thank you.
He's waving to you.
Color Guard, present colors.
Tate isn't here yet.
I'm sorry?
Tate isn't here yet.
Tate, can you wait till Tate?
He's our other rifleman.
Oh,
He just showed up.
oh, good. That was why I was trying to get my...
Just for the record, Tate's a Marine, so.
We'll make sure that makes the minutes.
So without the Navy, they can't get there on time.
Oh,
Are we all set? There he is.
Okay. 15, good. Right shoulder. Halt. Forward. March. Mark time. Mark. Colors turn. March. Color guard. Halt. Rifle. 2 steps. Halt. March. Rifle. Hold up. Halt. 15 count, man. Halt. Right shoulder. Halt. Okay. Reset. Colors.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Ready? 2. Rifle. Right shoulder. Halt. Color guard. Assemble. March. Colors turn. March. Forward. March. Mark down. Up. Color guard. Up. Hold up. Hold. Distance.
Thank you. Please remain standing for the invocation. Zareen Caldwell from Baha'i Community, please. Hi.
Good evening, thank you. This is the prayer for unity. O my God, verily I invoke thee and supplicate before thy threshold, asking thee that all thy mercies may descend upon these souls. Specialize them for thy favor and thy truth. O Lord, unite and bind together the hearts, join in accord all the souls, and exhilarate the spirits through the signs of thy sanctity and oneness. O Lord, make these faces radiant through the light of thy oneness. Strengthen the loins of thy servants in the service of thy kingdom. O Lord, thou possessor of infinite mercy, O Lord of forgiveness and pardon, Forgive our sins, pardon our shortcomings, and cause us to turn to the kingdom of thy clemency. Invoking the kingdom of might and power, humble at thy shrine and submissive before the glory of thine evidences. O Lord God, make us as waves of the sea, as flowers of the garden, united, agreed through the bounties of thy love. O Lord, dilate the breast through the signs of thy oneness, and make all mankind as stars shining from the same height of glory, as perfect fruits growing upon thy tree of life. Verily, thou art the Almighty, the self-subsistent, the giver, the forgiving, the pardoner, the omniscient, the one Creator.
Thank you so much. A roll call, please, Liz.
Mayor Dickey,
Here?
Vice Mayor LaCrone,
Present.
Councilmember Charno,
Present.
Councilmember Tolas,
Here.
Councilmember Brown,
Here.
Councilmember Magazine,
Here.
Councilmember Spellich.
Present.
Thank you. Next is reports by mayor, council members, and the town manager. Grady, do you have anything?
Yes, thank you, Mayor. Real quickly, I just wanted to make the public aware, council is aware of this because I've communicated this to you, but on October 24th, there was a fire over at the Salt River Pima Indian community, and unfortunately, that fire at the landfill ended up destroying the recycling facility. I was notified that Friday morning immediately after that, that there was going to be an issue with recycling and the need to suspend that until they were able to find another alternative. I was communicated with Republic Services, the government relations director, over that weekend, and I learned that Republic Services had found another alternative. In fact, on that Friday, following the fire, they were able to quickly find another alternative site to take the recyclable materials. In fact, it was a waste management recycling facility. Since that time, they've worked out slightly longer, more permanent arrangement. They have also started communicating with all the customers via robocalls, letting them know that recycling still is around and for them to continue to use their recycling bins. This item was originally going to be presented tonight by the government relations director, but I told him since they had already taken care of the issue and there was no need to suspend this recycling services, that I'd go ahead and take care of this. So thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Grady. Anybody have any questions about that? Council reports? Mike?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. The mayor and I did attend a conference last week. It was called Never Too Old, and we are never too old. And it was put together by MAG, the Maricopa Association of Governments, and the Arizona Public Health Association. And the day-long conference kind of focused on how communities and the state in general can more clearly coordinate better in terms of accommodating aging population, and some of the issues kind of centered around transportation, social issues, recreation, housing, that kind of thing. So a lot of several elected officials there, as well as administrators and other citizens. So I thought it was informative, and learned a lot that day. And there are some potential grants that we might be looking at that we learned about that day as well. Attended a Valley Metro board meeting, and believe it or not, they're already prepping for the Super Bowl, which is until 2023, but they're trying to accommodate large crowds that are going to be anticipated downtown Phoenix and elsewhere throughout the valley. And they're also going to start construction real soon on the South Central light rail extension. And the other thing is they're preparing for a vote, extend Prop 400, which is our transportation funding for the freeways and the light rail and the buses. So those were kind of the big topics there. And then lastly, attended a staff meeting. We had some staffers out from Valley Metro as well, and they're in the middle of a transit feasibility study for Fountain Hills at no cost. They're updating a study that was done several years ago, and they kind of reviewed with us some of the data they've gathered so far and the updates. And we're going to meet again probably after the holidays, and then there'll be at least 2 different public outreach sessions to inform citizens what we're looking at. So that's it for me.
Thank you, Mike. Anybody else? Yes, Sherry.
Thank you, Mayor.
Vice Mayor. Sorry.
The mayor and I attended the United Women Breakfast. It's a section of, or segment of United Way. And the mayor represented us. Did an amazing job representing Fountain Hills. She was part of a panel of other mayors from around the valley, the mayor from Gilbert, from Tolleson, from Guadalupe, and then our mayor. They were asked various questions, including how and why they got into politics, and the things that keep them up at night, the things on their heart, what concerns them the most. It was a fascinating forum and very well attended, and you did a great job, Mayor. Thank you.
Thank you, Vice Mayor. We're so glad to see you there. I was sort of starstruck because Olivia Fierro was our moderator, so I got to have fun. She's as nice as she seems. Anybody have any other activities? I want to thank David and Sherry, Councilman, sorry, I'm being too informal, Councilman Spellich and Vice Mayor for coming to my town talk. We had that. A lot of this stuff seems like a long time ago because we haven't met for 3 weeks, but that was, most of the folks there had a lot of questions about the lake and washes and some stuff about online sales and other things like that. So it was really nice, and I appreciated very much them coming. Again, seems like a long time ago, the International Dark Sky Discovery Center unveiling was on the 16th. I attended a Realtors meeting and the Monday Men's Discussion Group. The Mayor's Youth Council with Linda from our Community Services, we had our first meeting. I want to thank them and her for all of their work. MAG Regional Council met, and it is kind of all about Prop 400 these days. So they talked about how the cities need to kind of get together on what we would like to have and what we need to have, and make sure that we are at the table. And I know we are, because we have members on the Transportation Committee, and of course Grady's on the Managers Committee. So it kind of goes through those before it gets to Regional Council. But time flies so quickly. It seems like it's not for a while, but it'll creep up on us. We had Make a Difference Day. I want to thank the staff so much for that, and all of the people that came out, and the groups, and the participants for helping our neighbors. Halloween in the Hills, I only had a couple minutes to be there, and I went trick-or-treating with the grandkids, but I'm sure everybody had a wonderful time there. And again, thanks to staff, thanks to the chamber and everybody involved, Sammy's daughter, Stephanie. And last, I got to be on a radio show yesterday, Brian to Business radio show, and talk a lot about Copperwind. Bill Heinz was there, and Betsy Lavoie from the Chamber. So Fountain Hills all the time is really kind of neat. If there is anything else, next we have proclamations. We have 3 proclamations, so they're down there. I'm going to read them from down there and ask the folks that are here to receive them to come up. The first one's going to be the Veterans Day, and Councilman Spellich is going to help me with that. Gentlemen, want to come on up? Anybody that wants to receive it? Be in the picture? It's all about the picture. Okay, so would you like to read it?
Proclamation for Veterans Day. Proclamation for Veterans Day. Whereas we are pleased to honor, pay tribute on this day to the dedicated veterans who have served this great nation with such distinction, both in peacetime and in war. And whereas our community has continuing sense of gratitude to those who have given so much in defense of the freedoms which we all continue to enjoy. And whereas Americans, having abiding faith in ideals and strengths on which our great nation was founded, in our democratic process, and in the women and the men of the armed forces who have served our country so well. And whereas in the honor of these dedicated women and men, we pledge our continued defense of the nation, so that their sacrifice will stand before the entire world as a tribute to the spirit and determination of people dedicated to the principles of unity, freedom, and democracy. whereas on this occasion, let us recognize the great need of fostering a spirit of loyalty to the ideals that we have served as a foundation of this great country, liberty and justice for all. Now therefore, Mayor Ginny Dickey, Mayor of the Town of Fountain Hills, Arizona, urge our citizens to honor the veterans on November 11th, 2019, and commit themselves to unity and the preservation of our liberty, proclaimed on this 5th day of November. Thank you guys so much for your service. All veterans, we love you.
Thank you all so much. Thanks, Dave. That's for you, so. Thank you. Thank you so much. Our next proclamation is our Butterfly, Pollinator, and Wildlife Month. So if you'd like to come up, who would like to present this to you, I'll read it, and then we can present it to you for all your good works that you've been doing on this garden. Whereas, come on up, Lisa. Hi, how are you? Good to see you guys. Hello, it's been a while. Whereas we recognize that the residents of Fountain Hills live in a beautiful and amazing community, which we share with both native and migrating wildlife, and whereas we recognize the important role that pollinators, wildlife, and native plants play in a healthy ecosystem, and whereas we recognize that the population of some species of butterflies, pollinators, wildlife, and native plants have been declining, and whereas we recognize that the monarch butterfly is one of the species whose population has declined significantly over the last 25 years, and whereas we recognize that we have the obligation and ability to act as guardians and protectors of our beautiful environment and the pollinators and wildlife that share it with us, and whereas we recognize that every citizen of Fountain Hills can make a positive difference in creating wildlife-friendly habitats in locations where they live, work, learn, play, and worship, and whereas we acknowledge the role all citizens can play every day to celebrate our wonderful community and promote the goal of creating healthy, wildlife-friendly habitats, therefore, I, Jenny Dickey, Mayor, am honored to sign the Mayor's Monarch Pledge and support Fountain Hills working toward National Wildlife Federation's Community Wildlife Habitat Certification, and do hereby proclaim each November in the town of Fountain Hills as Butterfly, Pollinator, and Wildlife Month. Thank you so much for coming. Come on, Lisa, no, just take the picture. Thank you. So there's some fun stuff coming, and I'll let Alan tell you about that.
Good evening. I'm not going to take too much of your time. Just a couple of things. Just want to let you know that we just received a grant to plant trees throughout the community, and we decided we want to do one, maybe two here, one in honor tree for past, present, and future mayors. Not that you're going anyplace right now, but, and the other one I'd like to do on behalf of the council people, and they could probably be any place you want them, probably one at the firehouse or whatever. So we're going to be doing that as the time goes on. And also on November 14th from 4 to 6, we're going to have a butterfly social, which is free, it's open to the public. You can come and discuss, and we can tell you what we do, and that's going to be at the River Time Museum from 4 to 6. And we have giveaways and funds. And also, I'm trying to also do a license plate to save the monarchs for the state of Arizona. So I'm looking to do that also. So that's about it.
Thank you so much. Appreciate it. And last, we have Small Business Saturday. You probably heard about that from Black Friday and what we do after Thanksgiving. So whereas The government of Fountain Hills, Arizona celebrates our local small businesses and the contributions they make to our local economy and community. According to the United States Small Business Administration, there are 30.7 million small businesses in the United States, and they represent 99.7% of all firms with paid employees in the United States and are responsible for 64.9% of net new jobs created from 2000 to 2018. And whereas small business employ 47.3% of the employees in the private sector in the United States, and 94% of consumers in the U.S. value the contributions small businesses make to their communities, and whereas 96% of consumers who plan to shop on Small Business Saturday said the day inspires them to go small, independently owned retailers or restaurants that they've not been to before or would not otherwise have tried, and whereas 92% of companies planning promotions on Small Business Saturday said that the day helps their business stand out during the busy holiday shopping season. And whereas 59% of small business owners said Small Business Saturday contributes significantly to their holiday sales each year. And whereas Fountain Hills, Arizona supports our local businesses that create jobs, boost our local economy, and preserve our communities, and advocacy groups, as well as public-private organizations across the country have endorsed the Saturday after Thanksgiving as Small Business Saturday. Now, therefore, I, Ginny Dickey, Mayor of Fountain Hills, Arizona, do hereby proclaim November 30th, 2019 as Small Business Saturday and urge the residents of our community and communities across the country to support small business and merchants on Small Business Saturday and throughout the year. Dated today, and I'm going to make James come up and get this. And I hope everybody can patronize our wonderful businesses on the Saturday after Thanksgiving. Do you have anything to say, young man?
Just that our town really is dependent, and our businesses are dependent on our residents shopping here in Fountain Hills. So I would encourage everyone to get out and support our small businesses on Small Business Saturday.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Okay. Okay. Thank you all. Next, we have our presentation by Captain Larry Kratzer of MCSO with our monthly update. Welcome, Captain.
Good evening, Madam Mayor, members of the council. It's good to be back up here giving the presentation. I know we've had a few busy agendas over the last couple months. So one of the first things I wanted to talk about tonight and remind residents of Fountain Hills is their diligence in protecting themselves from being scammed. We continue to see a high rate of fraud or fraudulent schemes or scams that are occurring, and unfortunately people are continuing to fall victim to that. So the Fountain Hills Times has helped us greatly by putting out PSA ads to remind folks of what they can do to protect themselves. But I just want to take this opportunity to remind folks to be leery of phone calls that they may receive, especially unsolicited phone calls. There's a lot of phone number spoofing where the phone numbers may appear to be a legitimate phone number, especially a local phone number. Or if you Google the phone number, it might even come back to a company that the person is claiming to be with. So with the technology out there that these scammers can use, they're able to easily spoof phone numbers. One of the things that we constantly remind folks is don't give out your personal information over the phone or on the computer. Certain utility companies may require certain types of validation processes to make sure that you are who you are, but they typically won't ask you for your full Social Security number, bank account information, or any of that over the telephone. So we're reminding folks to not turn over any of that information over the phone or online. One of the big things that we continue to see regarding scams is unsolicited phone calls where companies are asking for that person to allow them to remote into their computer for whatever reason. They might say that there's a technical issue or some spam or malware on their computer, and they allow that person to remote into their computer. And what people don't understand is while they're in that computer, they're able to get bank account information, passwords, and things of that sort that then allow them to gain access to their personal information. Another thing that we remind folks and we suggest is to find a credit monitoring company. There are a lot of times where people don't understand or realize that their personal information's been compromised. And if you subscribe to, there's a lot of free companies out there you can subscribe to that will send you email alerts if your credit inquiry, if an inquiry on your credit's pulled. So it's a good way for someone to know that that's occurring before they become victim of a fraudulent account that's open in their name. One of the things that we've talked about in meetings with the town, and I won't get too far into it because we're still working on planning it, but there is some training or some education that we're looking at bringing to residents of Fountain Hills that would relate to scams and being aware of those things. So more information on that will come, but we encourage people to take part in that when the time does come, and that's offered. Vehicle burglaries, we're continuing to see few instances of vehicles being burglarized, and again, it's vehicles that are unlocked. It's very rare that we're seeing forced entry into a vehicle. It's usually the unlocked vehicles with valuable property inside. So, and as Christmas time and the holiday season come near, those type of crimes increase because there usually are a lot more valuables in people's vehicles. So we're reminding people to lock your vehicles and keep valuables out of sight. Try not to leave those in your vehicle. Another thing that's very common with the holidays approaching are package thefts. So if you order something through Amazon or any of the other companies online where they ship to your door, around Christmas time, that's a high target time for criminals who take advantage of that opportunity. So we remind folks to try not to leave your packages out on your doorstep. If you know it's being delivered, there's a lot of tracking mechanisms so you know when it's there. And even if it's contacting a neighbor to pick up your package for you and bring it into their home, do that. We also encourage the use of the doorbell cameras or surveillance cameras. A lot of times, just the visibility of that alone is enough to deter a thief who knows they're going to be caught on camera. I won't steal the thunder on the updates on the pedestrian traffic safety subcommittee, but one of the things this time of year brings with the winter visitors that come back in town is a higher increased volume in traffic on the roadway and pedestrian traffic, people that like to walk and bicycle with the weather that turns nice. So we're encouraging people who are driving to slow down, pay particular attention to crosswalks and those areas where pedestrians are likely to cross. And for those pedestrians who are walking or bicycling, reminder to wear bright colored clothing, take your time, make sure you make eye contact with drivers at those crosswalks to make sure that they see you, even though you have the right of way. Don't always assume that the vehicle is going to stop. MCSO is continuing to step up the traffic enforcement from January of 2019 to current. We've increased traffic stops and citations over 500%. So that's one of the things that we're continually trying to do to increase pedestrian safety by enforcing the speed limits and stop sign violations in town. I'll wrap this up with some of the upcoming events or events that we've taken part in. We recently had Coffee with a Cop on October 5th at the Starbucks. We had a great turnout. A lot of people came by, said hi, had a cup of coffee, and talked to us about some of the things we're doing, and we were able to provide them with pamphlets on fraud or scams and things of that nature. MCSO participated at Halloween in the Hills. It was a great turnout. We had to go buy more candy at least once. Red Ribbon Day at the middle school we took part in. Make a Difference Day we took part in, and that was an amazing event that made a big impact in the community. Upcoming events, I know it's on the town's agenda. The Sheriff Penzone is coming to do a community talk on November 18th at the Community Center from 6 to 8 p.m. We will be taking part in the Leadership Academy. It's the final week of it on Thursday. MCSO and Fire are hosting the final day. We're excited about that. We're going to bring all the members of the Leadership Academy out to Saguaro Lake and put them on the Munson boat and give them a little tour of Saguaro Lake and show them some of the toys that we have at Lake Patrol, and then do a little presentation for them. So we encourage other citizens to take part in that. There's a lot of fun. That's a fun field trip day for the members of the academy. And then finally, Stroll in the Glow coming up with the presentation of the first responder tree and the town's tree. MCSO will be there and participating in that. That's all I have for my update. I'll leave it open for any questions or comments.
Thank you, Captain. Yes, David Spelch, Councilman Spelch.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Captain, my thoughts and prayers to the 2 deputies that were seriously injured yesterday.
Thank you, Councilman.
Speedy recovery. Please tell them I send the best, as I sure the other council members do. During the town talk, it's been a constant flow of emails and public speaking about the speeding. And I was just shocked that at the town talk, Sergeant
Lawson
was there, and I kind of put him on the spot, and I said, how much has traffic violations increased? And I just think it's good for the public to know. You have 1 deputy in 1 month that wrote 193 citations in 1 month.
That's correct.
That would encompass my entire career. It's a staggering amount of traffic stops. And with those traffic stops, it's important for the residents to know that people were caught on warrant arrests, I'm sure narcotics and other things. So thank you for the increase. And I just wanted the residents to know that's being an ex-police officer, 193 tickets in a month is a lot. So thank you.
Thank you. I'll pass that along to that particular deputy as well.
Yeah, don't name them.
Yeah.
Councilman Magazine?
Yeah, just to follow on that, I've noticed a lot more speeders being pulled over. And I know we all appreciate that, but I also want to say that, when we think of police, we think of law enforcement alone. But you folks are doing so much for the community that isn't necessarily directly related to law enforcement, like Make a Difference Day and so on. You cited a lot of them. And so I want to thank you for your leadership for that.
Thank you, Councilmember.
Thank you. Councilman Charno?
Thank you. Captain, how are the service aids working out? I know we introduced that several months ago. How's that all working out?
Yeah, great question. It's working out really well. They're able to, the service aid that we have here in Fountain Hills, currently the town's not being charged for that. I know we addressed that early on. I don't know what the future holds for that, but I'm sure it's something, if there is plans for that, that can be worked out with town and finance. But currently, that program's been a huge success. It's kept deputies on the roadway, allows them to spend time focusing on traffic enforcement or some of the community outreach things that we do. And that member has also been very involved in. He was at Halloween in the hills, and he's taken part in some of those other things. But it's been very successful, especially for some of these reports that we take where there's no suspect information or there's no leads to follow up on. It's just a documentation report for insurance purposes, and allows that deputy to free up for that 30, 40 minutes that he may have normally spent dealing with that. So.
Thank you so much. We appreciate your presence on the campuses, of course, and again, our best to your colleagues and the colleague that you also lost. I think they had a ceremony either today or tomorrow. So,
yeah, they're going to have it on Friday. I appreciate that, and thank you for reaching out to us and see if there was anything you guys could do for our lieutenant. We appreciate that.
Of course. Thank you, Captain. Next, we have another presentation which is related, which is a presentation of our Pedestrian and Traffic Safety Subcommittee. Grady, or just straight to?
Mayor and Council, just wanted to let you know that earlier last month, the Council Subcommittee on Pedestrian Traffic Safety met, and they were very pleased with the progress that the committee and the staff have made, and they thought it was very important for both the public and for the newspaper to get a handle on the issues that they've been dealing with. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to our Public Works Director as a presentation to pretty much show what we've done in the past, what kind of improvements we've made, and then what we're currently working on and what we anticipate we'll be doing in the future. With that, I'll turn it over to Mr. Weldy.
Thank you. Madam Mayor, Vice Mayor, council members, thank you for the opportunity to bring not only yourselves but the rest of the community up to date on the things that we had completed, some of the items that we are currently working on, and items that we intend to tackle as part of our future in the pedestrian and traffic safety. These are improvements that we had done in the past. The top left represents part of the Palisades wrong way driving. Not only did we do enhanced pavement markings, but we installed supplemental signs, do not enter signs, and we also installed directional raised pavement markers that are red on the opposite side. So in the event, should someone turn the wrong direction at night, those raised pavement markers are red reflective. The bottom left is the improvement we made to the crosswalk on Palisades near the high school. We added the continental striping there. Some people refer to them as piano keys. Top right is a representation, and it's a little bit difficult to see, but also as part of the Palisades wrong way driver, we added guidance skip lines. Those are the little yellow, people call them chicken scratches or chicken marks. So those are guidance markers that help people arrive into their lane. And then on the bottom right are the curb opening and ADA ramp improvements we made on the Avenue of the Fountains fronting Park Place. A little bit of background. We had a considerable amount of concern about traffic and pedestrian safety in town. A council subcommittee was formed to study and recommend measures to improve the pedestrian safety and traffic safety. The council subcommittee consists of Mayor Dickey, Councilmember Brown, and Vice Mayor LaCrone. The technical support to the subcommittee consists of Maricopa County Captain Larry Kratzer, Public Works Director, myself, and the town manager, Mr. Miller. The council subcommittee meetings have been held 2 times a year to review staff recommendations for safety improvements. And not only are we, when we say staff recommendations, we collect data through emails, phone calls, and other avenues, including people that come to the front counter, and we weigh all of those and survey them, and in the event that a change is noted or recommended, we bring that to the committee for their recommendation. The past improvements that we had discussed on Palisades, this is just a little bit more information on that. This is also part of the past, the curb opening ramps. This is one that was actually brought back to us, so we added it back into here. We have some residents here that utilize wheelchairs or mobility vehicles or carts, and they were facing some challenges in the intersection of Palisades and Fountain Hills Boulevard, and Fountain Hills Boulevard and El Lago. So 2 years ago, we actually went in there and removed the pavement in front of the curb opening ramps and repaved a small path in front of each of those. What had happened was the years of treatment with slurry seal had raised the pavement 1.5 inches or so above the curb opening ramp, and it was a very uncomfortable passage across there, oftentimes resulting in some jolting that made them uncomfortable. But since it was brought back up, we decided to keep this in. Next, we're going to present to you some recent improvements. The Avenue of the Fountains and Verde River, everybody knows this intersection. We most recently installed in this intersection the flashing LED stop signs, and we also turned it into an all-way stop. While we were in there, we made changes to the crosswalks and added the continental keys, as you can see. Also tied into this particular project was the narrowing of the Avenue of the Fountains east and westbound between La Montana and Saguaro. On the left-hand side, we placed some yellow pavement markings to force people to the right and also give the appearance that the road is a little bit narrower to reduce the number of vehicles passing, slower vehicles, or vehicles pulling in or out of parking spaces. This is one that was a long time coming. We made modifications to the median at the driveway. On the left-hand side was the past, and on the right-hand side is what it currently looks like. I will note that the number of eastbound left turns or U-turns from the Avenue of the Fountains onto La Montana to back to westbound are substantially reduced. So we have reduced the number of U-turns in this intersection and minimized or lessened some of the confusion for the people that use this intersection on a daily basis. This is our sidewalk infill. The top photo shows the area where we built the sidewalk, and the bottom is actually a picture. So this is on Palisades, directly across from the high school. And it should be noted that at least 2 couples were walking this pathway for a considerable amount of time. And in this location, they left the sidewalk, entered the pavement or the road, and then they re-entered closer to Golden Eagle Boulevard. And immediately after this was opened and the landscape and completed, they had a nice little skip down through there of the 4 of them. So those are the residents that I've witnessed using it first. And we certainly have more using it now that they're aware of it. Most recently, we have painted not all, but the majority of the median bullnoses. And so these are the raised medians in the center of the road. Sometimes they're on the shoulder or the service road, or they may be the entry to a subdivision. This is a reflective paint with reflective beads. And for each of these, we also placed reflective pavement markers on them. When I say most but not all, the contractor had to go away and fulfill another commitment. And since this is all done by hand, they will be back here soon to finish this project. This next one right here is rumble strips. Rumble strips were installed on Saguaro, both north and southbound, approaching the Avenue of the Fountains. For those of you that drive this on a regular basis, you'll note that not only is there a physical, but an audible notification that there is a traffic control change and you're approaching it. The other location that we did this is on Palisades, approaching Golden Eagle Boulevard. And we seem to, at least based on conversations with the sheriff's office, we're having a little bit better compliance with the stop signs and some of the downhill speeds approaching Golden Eagle on Palisades.
That's a good question about that.
Oh, yes, sure.
Thank you, Mayor. Justin, not in the last year or so, but before that, we talked about putting some kind of roadway softenings to get people to slow down. I forget what they're called. Remember I mentioned Bainbridge as an example, and we found that the speeds there were excessive. You're looking at me puzzled.
Madam Mayor, Council Member, I'm trying to remember whether or not this was a discussion or a petition in your neighborhood about speed tables or speed humps.
It was a discussion followed by a petition that we could not get enough signatures on.
Okay, so now I'm on the same page as you.
Okay. Have you thought about using these rumble strips, which look like they're probably fairly inexpensive, in highly trafficked areas where you do surveys of the speed of the cars that are far in excess of the posted speeds?
Madam Mayor, Council Member, to date, we have not considered using it. In this case, the application for rumble strips is to alert a motorist of an upcoming traffic control change or device that more often than not is going to require a full stop or possibly a sharp curve. For controlling speed, we have not considered that, nor is that a recommendation in the MUTCD.
Made them big enough they'd slow down.
Absolutely.
Keep trying.
Thank you.
One of the other ones and the improvements that are underway is the flashing signs in front of the high school. So we were able to get audible push buttons on that. And so when you push that button, it actually starts beeping and you know it. We are in the process right now of installing an indication light. And so when someone pushes the button right above their head on the right or left, there will be a little light that comes on that lets them know that the lights are flashing. This is a proprietary signal, and this individual is currently out of country on a church mission, and so we are waiting for his return to install those, but we are working to get that done. Fountain Hills Boulevard shoulder widening, as you all know that we've done half of that. We've added 10 feet on this, and so for this section, we've now added not only a safe place for cyclists and pedestrians, but should you need to pull over in your vehicle, you have an opportunity to pull over in this place in the southbound lane here and be out of the road. Avenue of the Fountains in La Montana. There will be a roundabout constructed there in the near future. Based on the current schedule, we're thinking we should be able to start in the spring of 2020 on that project.
Question?
Councilman?
Yeah, Justin, any idea how you're going to handle the traffic in that area once you start construction? Seems to me it could be problematic.
There will be numerous times, council member, where we are going to have to divert or shift traffic to one side or the other. We are fortunate on La Montana that we have a very wide pavement section that allows us to shift them either to the east or the west side and allow for the majority of the traffic to be unimpeded. There will be some times when there will be difficulty reaching the drop boxes of the post office on La Montana. There will be other times where right and left turns will be prohibited as a result of the activity. And lastly, and the one that is the most difficult, there will be a period of time where the intersection is closed for some of the work to take place. So as we move forward, and when a contractor is selected to build that, the town staff will work with them on their traffic control plans and do our best to minimize the traffic congestion and the confusion in that area.
I don't remember the design, but will you be taking out any of the median?
Yes, council member, there will be a section of the Avenue of the Fountain Park, which is on the east side of the intersection, and there will be some modifications to the raised median on the west side.
Thank you.
You're welcome. The town-wide sidewalk infill, the council subcommittee recommended increasing funding from $100,000 to $200,000 annually for sidewalk infill. The town now budgets $200,000 for this. The town engineer, in all the years that he's been here, and Mr. Harrell is here, has prepared long and short-term sidewalk infill plans. It's a rather large plan, and so I do not have it here tonight. But if any of you would like a copy of that, it's color-coded for the years that we believe that we can do the work. I will certainly share that with you, or you're more than welcome to come by my office or Mr. Harrell's office, and we will show you the large version that we use to select these projects. Other proposals and measures. We seek and submit grant funding applications to the Maricopa Association of Governments, or MAG. We have requested a grant to help us with the safe routes to schools, completion of a multimodal path on Shea with the city of Scottsdale. A little information about that. On Shea Boulevard, south side, from 142nd to Eagle Mountain, there is no sidewalk or pathway. Scottsdale's portion of that comes up just a little bit from there. And so we are teaming up with the city of Scottsdale to apply for a grant to complete that pathway and tie Scottsdale and Fountain Hills together. It's going to be a pretty nice project, and it's been on the books for several years that the town has attempted to get grant funding or budget money for that, and we're hoping this year is going to be our successful year to get the grant funding. Another one that we're working on is a pedestrian and bicycle safety master plan. And so in this case, what we will do is reach out to pre-selected or approved consultants by MAG or ADOT and have them help us design a town-wide master plan for pedestrian and bicycle safety. And what we will do in the future is utilize that not only for our sidewalk infill, but our safe routes to schools. And when we apply for grants, having that available and being able to present that to the committees that are reviewing the grants will be a benefit to us as a whole. The next portion is actually the captain's, and I'm not sure if you'd like to come up and do.
Justin,
the
real
last
quick, if you
Yes,
just
sir.
go to the last item, which is, I think you skipped over that, but we're aware that there is some, it's called CMAQ money, it's federal money that flows through to Maricopa Association of Governments. And what Justin touched upon is, by us having this pedestrian and bicycle safety master plan, will make it much easier for us to get that CMAQ money. The city of Paradise, or the town of Paradise Valley, recently received over $2 million to pretty much finish up their sidewalks. And so our goal is to get this master plan and still try to go after that money. So we feel that that would help us not have to do this infill every year of $200,000. We might be able to knock out, $2, $3, $4 million, whatever the cost is going to be, to get these all knocked out at one fell swoop. So just want to let you know that that's the goal here.
Thank you for that clarification and additional information. The next couple of slides are actually for law enforcement.
Okay. The Town of Fountain Hills enforcement improvements. So in regards to MCSO traffic enforcement, MCSO is working on increased visibility of officers on the streets enforcing the traffic laws. We work with Justin and the town quite a bit on the deployment of the town-owned speed trailer on arterial and residential streets. We can request those locations and give those locations to Justin and the Public Works, and they'll move those around for us. And then they get that data that's gathered from the traffic-owned speed trailer, and they give us a report on speeds, time of day, volume of traffic. They're really comprehensive reports that gives us the analytics side of trying to decide where we put our resources. And with that, not only visible traffic enforcement, but other traffic calming measures that the town can use. Items such as the rumble strips and those sorts of things. Zero tolerance enforcement in the school zones. That's something that we've done for a while. Is we don't issue warnings typically in a school zone. There's too much risk of to the children and students in those areas, and there's no excuse for speeding through those areas at all. We're continuing to evaluate traffic and accident data to determine other potential safety solutions. So that's another area where we work closely with the town, Justin's staff, and Public Works, is to, if we get traffic complaints or emails from residents about a certain area that has a high volume of accidents, or if we determine ourselves that there's an area where we're identifying a high volume of traffic accidents, we work with Public Works and pull the data for the accidents and see if, a lot of times people think that there are a lot of accidents in a certain area, and we can pull that data to see if that's actually the case or not, more than what would be normal for the traffic flow through that area. Evaluate the effectiveness of implemented traffic and pedestrian improvements and make refinements. So that's monitoring these crosswalks and some of these improvements that Public Works have done with the different designs of the crosswalks that make it a little more visible. Convene the council subcommittee quarterly to review progress and safety solutions. So we have a lot of good discussion at those subcommittee quarterly meetings. There's a lot of good discussion on things that may work or ideas or topics that we want to address in the future. And then continue taking recommendations from council subcommittee to town council for discussion and possible action. That was it for my portion. Bring Justin back up here for any questions.
Thank you both very much. Any questions? I wanted to just mention that the zero tolerance, we talked about that even being more of a town-wide philosophy. If everybody kind of gets used to that idea, maybe we would, be able to have that not just in the school zones, but so we'll see how that is accepted. Also, we talked about cameras on Palisades where the right turn on red, where everybody goes when that sign says not to. So those are other things we talked about. We really appreciate the citizen input because we are hearing about intersections and other places that might be trouble areas and we don't have eyes everywhere. So really appreciate hearing that. And one of the other things we talked a little bit about was using something besides just accidents to warrant action, so that when you said other data, I really appreciated that, because sometimes something can seem really dangerous and you look at it and it's like they haven't had any accidents, but it still isn't, maybe not as safe as it could be. So we really appreciate your help, Director and Captain. Yes, Councilman.
Well, I just want to thank the members of the council subcommittee and the staff, because this is a lot of work. And it shows tremendous progress, not only what you've done, but what you plan to do. And I think we really need to make the citizens as well aware of this as possible. So I just want to express my thanks to all of you.
Yes, thank you so much. Great, we really appreciate it.
Thank you.
So we said 5C is not on the agenda anymore, so we have call to the public. Do we have any speaker cards?
Yes.
Thank you.
One from Lynn Jaffe.
Hi, Lynn.
I didn't plan on speaking tonight. I'm a student at the community center, and I've been taking an art class there for about a year, and we had a student art show. And I had some 3 pieces in there. They were political pieces, and I hung them. And I came in tonight, and somebody there said, "You have to take your pieces down." Somebody complained. Now, they were political, and I wouldn't expect everybody to like them, but if somebody put a picture with hearts and flowers of Trump and I didn't like it, I would never ask them to take it down. So I think my First Amendment rights are being violated. I don't want to take the pieces down because they're art. We weren't told not to put up political pieces, so I didn't violate any rules that I knew of. And I urge you to go over there and take a look and support my First Amendment rights. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mayor,
Grady?
the
Yeah.
town attorney and I will discuss this and get this matter resolved. Thank you for bringing this to our attention.
Any other cards? No? Okay. So next is our consent agenda. Did anybody want to take anything off? Is everything okay? Okay, can I get a motion for the consent agenda approval?
So moved. Second.
Thank you. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you. Now we're to our regular agenda, and the first item is consideration of appointing Hayden Arnold to the Community Service Advisory Commission. I would ask for a motion to approve the appointment of Hayden to the Community Services Advisory. The term goes until June 30th, 2020.
Move approval.
Second.
All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Thank you. Congratulations. Thanks for applying.
And waiting.
Well, okay, well, I think our last item on the regular agenda before we go into our work-study session then, since we moved item B, is item C, which is regarding our land use assumption, our IIP, which is our development fees. Scared you there, didn't I? And Grady?
I just have a few introductory remarks, Mayor. Mayor and Council, you recall that back in September, I believe it was September 17th, we went through the preliminary land use assumptions and infrastructure improvement plan. There were a number of items in there that the council brought, shared feedback and input on. We went back and we looked at it. We came back, and what you see tonight is we made a number of revisions based on the direction and guidance we received from you back in September. You'll also see as you go through the presentation tonight that there's some comparisons between where these proposed fees lie with our other neighboring communities, so that will also be shared with you. The consultant, Ben, who is with Tischler Beese, who has the model that plugged all this information and data into, is here tonight, and he's going to go ahead and give the presentation. With that, I'll turn it over to Ben.
Thanks, Grady.
Hi, welcome.
Mayor, Council, thanks for having me back out here. All right, so the first several slides, they're very technical, so I will move through those quickly because really you're wanting to get to the meat of what we need to talk about tonight. So tonight we're looking at adopting the land use assumptions and the IIP. The development fees, those are separate. That is taken care of in the next phase, which you can start in 30 days. But tonight we're really looking at the land use assumptions and the IIP. When I was out here in September, we looked at some components that are, needed to be pulled out. So we're looking at 3 IIP components. So you will have a Parks and Rec IIP, a Fire IIP, and a Streets IIP.
And if I may too, one of the major assumptions that we removed from this plan, the land use assumptions and infrastructure improvement plans, the horizon on this is for 10 years. And so both the staff and everything we've heard from state trust land, we don't believe that the state trust land will develop in that 10-year period based on information we received about how expensive it would be for them to develop. A number of the infrastructure needs were actually taken out as a result of that. So that is reflected in what you'll see tonight.
Thank you.
Let's see. All right. So just remember that, we have certain costs that are eligible, some that are ineligible based on Arizona law. So we're looking at, any facility or improvement that's required to serve future development, no maintenance, repairs, replacement, resurfacing, anything like that. If you had excess capacity to buy into, we could use that. And the last one, we're not doing plan-based, so that's, we don't have to worry about that. All right, most of your fees are incremental expansion. So basically what we're saying is, this is your level of service today. So it may be acres of parkland per person. It may be police vehicles per square feet of different types of non-residential development. But basically you want to maintain that as you grow. So if you have, for the sake of the argument, 1 police vehicle for every 1,000 residents. If you grow by 1,000 residents over the next 10 years, then you need to add 1 additional vehicle. So basically just having future development pay for exactly what is required to maintain that level of service. Not doing plan-based. We don't need to do credits. So first thing, land use assumptions. So this is based on Maricopa Association of Governments. We did compare this to recent permitting data, so you're in line. So basically what we're saying is that over the next 10 years, we expect you to grow by over 1,000 housing units, and that translates into population growth of almost 2,200 additional residents. Then on the non-residential side, we expect you to grow by about 430,000 square feet. And so that's all rolled up in the bottom right-hand corner. But basically we're saying, industrial development, about 13,000 square feet, almost 200,000 of commercial, over 130,000 of institutional, and almost 90,000 of office development. So these projections basically prove the need for additional development or additional infrastructure. And then we use these projections in the revenue projections that are in the IIP. So basically it proves that the fee revenue will pay for the planned improvements. So any questions on the land use assumptions? Okay. All right, first up we have Parks and Rec. So we're looking at developed parkland and park amenities. We removed the trail component. So the only real difference in the fees from last time is that you don't have that trail component. So we're saying over the next 10 years, to maintain your current level of service and serve planned development, you would need about 10 additional acres of developed parkland, and you would need almost 6 additional park improvements or amenities. So that cost, the amenity cost, will be about $1.8 million. So when you allocate that to the different types of development, so you're making sure that, because different types of development have different demand indicators, it varies the fees. And so what we're saying is that, for every additional person who moves to Fountain Hills, you should charge $891.19 for park improvements, and for every additional job, it should be $347.04. And so basically all we're doing is just multiplying that cost per person or that cost per job by the related demand indicator. So for a single-family unit, the park fee would be $1,916.
Council? Yeah, excuse me, I don't mean to interrupt, but I'm looking at need for park amenities, 2018 population, 28,840. What is that number?
28,000 what?
28,840. And then in 2028, 31,000.
Oh, is that the existing population and
Need for
then
park-
the projected
Yeah,
population?
need for park amenities, right.
Yeah, it's projecting the demand. So it's basically saying if you're at this today and you have this many amenities, and then you're going to be at this, hold on, let me give you real numbers. If you're going to be at 26,192 persons in 2028, then you would need to add a certain amount of park amenities to maintain the existing level of service.
I get maybe I'm misunderstanding. I'm questioning, for example, 2019 population, 29,048. What is that related to? I mean, we clearly don't have 29,000.
That's your peak population, so any of your seasonal residents.
Well,
So
that
the-
includes seasonal.
Yeah, because we know that they're going to use your park amenities, so we want to make sure that we're allocating the costs, or basically your existing development, they're paying their fair share.
I see, okay.
All right, any other questions on the Parks and Rec fees? All right, next up we have fire. So we're looking at two components, apparatus and equipment, both with the incremental expansion methodology, so just maintaining what you have today. We removed the facilities component that was shown last time. So we're saying that over the next 10 years, based on your existing infrastructure and your planned growth, you would need about half of an apparatus. So future development would pay for about half of that apparatus, and you would need 3 additional units of equipment.
Oh, sorry, Councilman?
A quick question, and maybe this might be more for staff, but without the state trust land then, I mean, if we don't count that ever, are we ever going to need a third fire station, or don't we know that?
I'll call on the chief. Mr. Ott? I'm not sure you heard the question, but
He's probably not paying attention back there.
yeah, the question, and my understanding is, we do not need a third fire station unless the state trust land develops, but I'll turn it over to Mr. Ott. I think we had in this plan identified extra apparatus so we can maintain service levels at 2 of the fire stations, but I'll turn it over to Mr. Ott.
Mayor, council, town manager, that's correct. The discussions we've had was that the third station was always built on the increase in density with the state trust land. So as it sits right now, unless there's any other changes that would happen up towards Adero Canyon, or the location for the station has kind of moved a couple times, but it was originally set to go in kind of a pocket park area off of Desert Canyon, almost to Sunridge Canyon. So if something in the Eagles Nest area changed in some sort of development, then it might warrant that, but at this point, we don't see a need for it. And again, within 10 years, we don't need that or the apparatus for it. So the budget had included an engine, a brush truck, and then the staffing that we would have for that station, so.
Thank you.
Also, because you have to update every 5 years, if, in the next 5 years, it looked like the state trust land was, likely to develop, in your next update, you could do a component for the fire facilities. There are, several ways you can take care of that. I mean, if the developer built a fire station before you updated, in the next update, you could just do a cost recovery where you just pay back the developer, or you essentially do a credit so the developer isn't paying that portion of it. So there are a few ways to take care of that if and when the need arises. All right, so on fire, we're looking at a single-family fee of $122, and the decrease on this is mainly related to removing the facilities component. Any questions on fire? All right. Next up, we have streets. So we're looking at an arterial improvement component and an intersection improvement component. So last time we had, as part of the arterial improvements, widening of Fountain Hills Boulevard. We removed that. So now we're only looking at 10-year demand of 2.3 lane miles, which has a cost of about $1.8 million, and then 1.3 additional improved intersections at a cost of about $800,000.
If I may, too, Mayor and Council, so with the state trust land, that it was pretty much predicated that that would be the justification for widening that. If for some reason something were to happen, we can always go ahead and negotiate something like that in a development agreement where we could share some of that cost or they can contribute. Same thing with the fire station. So that didn't make sense to put this in the plan unless, say, in 5 years we realize that maybe things have changed, then it makes sense to do an update to include those.
Thanks. All right, so with the street fees, removing the Fountain Hills Boulevard project decreased the fees substantially. So we're looking at a single-family fee of $1,935. All right, any questions on streets? Okay. All right, so this is just a quick comparison of your current fees at the top and then the proposed fees at the bottom. So a single-family unit today would pay $1,601, and the proposed fees, that same unit would pay $3,974.
Repeat that, please.
The proposed fee for a single-family fee would be $3,974.
Thank you.
Right, so this is a comparison to other cities in the valley. So you can see Fountain Hills in gray there, so your current fee near the bottom, with the proposed fee being closer to the middle. So do we have any questions on the fee comparison?
So just to note on that same chart, then the current fee that we're charging is $1,600, and what was the fee like a couple of months ago in September? Do you remember? It was quite a bit higher than the 39.
It was closer to 7,500 or 7,800, I believe. Ben, do you remember what that was?
That sounds about right, because the street fee was about $5,100.
Yeah.
So that sounds about right. All right, next up, just a multifamily comparison. So again, your current fees are near the bottom, but then the proposed fees put you, right in the middle of, all the other cities in the valley. All right, and then for commercial, this is showing what you would pay for commercial retail development of 50,000 square feet. So previously it would have been $12,000 because they were only paying a fire development fee, whereas it's about $191 under the proposed fees. Excuse me. All right, any questions on commercial fees?
Ben, also, based on council input at the September 17th meeting, there was a question. We had a separate fee in there for, was it institutional or hotel?
Yes, we had assisted living and hotel.
That's correct. And then based on the direction we had from the council, we went ahead and just included that in the commercial cost per square foot, correct?
Yes, so hotel will be commercial like it is today, and then assisted living will be institutional as it is today. All right.
Vice Mayor?
A quick question on the comparison charts. Scottsdale 0, is that just that we didn't have the data?
So Scottsdale only charges for water and sewer fees. They take care of most of their other infrastructure needs using CFDs or community facility districts, similar to Paradise Valley.
As an example, that would be like what we did at Eagle Mountain. So just imagine they have some very large ranch areas there, DC Ranch and such, and they probably have it broken down to the subdivision level within a bigger ranch, and they figure out what those fees will be. But we were, the mayor actually brought this to our attention today, that, question the zero, because, yeah, it's like that was a very good observation, because how can Scottsdale be doing this without any fees? And they just, I believe that after the legislature really curtailed what cities and towns could charge on development impact fees, that they found a creative way of getting around that. And they were probably maybe already doing that, because I know they have a lot of large ranch-type developments for their master planned communities. So, thank you.
I have a question about that. Do they operate under the same restrictions that development fee, like in how they can use that money in a CFD?
No. But with a CFD, you're repaying any debt through your property tax. So you could potentially have existing development pay for improvements to future development.
Okay, but they don't have to meet those same, like, it can be maintenance, or they kind of set it up however they want? Okay.
Basically, yes, yeah.
Thank you.
Any other questions? All right, so again, September 17th, we had the public hearing for these land use assumptions and the IIP. So tonight is the potential adoption. You do have to adopt these within 60 days, so November 16th is the last day that you may adopt them without restarting the process, which would mean you would have to advertise for 60 days, have a public hearing, wait 30 days, and adopt. Once you have adopted the land use assumptions and IIP, you can have your public hearing on the development fees after 30 days. Then 30 days after that, you can adopt those fees, and then 75 days after that, the fees become effective.
Okay. Thank you. Do we have any speaker cards on this? No? Questions, further discussions? Okay, thank you. So are you ready to make a motion, or motion to adopt the resolution 2019-53? Do we have a motion?
Also move.
Thank you.
Resolution 2019-53, recommended changes to land use assumptions and infrastructure improvements plan.
I'll second that.
Thank you. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? 7-0. Thank you very much. Thank you for coming in and explaining that to us. Looking at the wrong person. There you are. Thank you. Go on here. So I think that does it for this part of our meeting. So what do I do? I adjourn? Do I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
Thank you. All those in favor, say aye. Aye. Thank you. We are adjourned from our regular session.
And then now you convene
Anybody?
the work session.
Pardon me?
Now you convene the work session.
Somebody wants a break? We'll take a little 5-minute break or so. Thanks. Liz said we have to get going, so let's go. So I'll call the meeting to order, which I just did with the gavel. I don't know that we have to do roll call and anything like that. We can go straight into the Economic Development Plan, Grady?
Yes, I'll go ahead and turn it over to Mr. Smith, who has a presentation for you. Mr. Smith?
Great. Thank you, Town Manager, Mayor, and Council. It's a pleasure to be here tonight. I want to thank you all for your time over the last couple months in meeting with the Town Manager and I to receive your input on our presentation. Wanted to start by kind of introducing our economic development team. There's been a lot of turnover in the last year, so I joined the team in June. I'm hoping that you've all met Jody James. She's in the back of the room, new economic development analyst who took Michael Martella's spot, and then I know you all know Grace. She was here earlier, but looks like she had to leave. So that's our team right now, and really excited about our efforts going forward. So people sometimes ask what economic development is, and it really is, creating well-being for a community through job creation, retention, increasing the tax base, and contributing to the quality of life, according to the International Economic Development Council. Economic development really is a team sport in many ways. We have a number of partners that we work with, and I will talk about how some of those fit in as I go through the presentation, but just to kind of give you an idea of some of the groups that we're working with. And I'll just kind of highlight a few of these. The Greater Phoenix Economic Council, we get a number of our leads and prospects through them. The Arizona Office of Tourism and both of our Indian communities that are our neighbors are a source of grants for our tourism program. This year, we joined the Canada-Arizona Business Council, and so we're really looking forward to opportunities to grow business and also tourism with our neighbors to the north. And then I'd be remiss not to mention that we have Betsy Lavoie from the Chamber here, and she's been a great advocate, and I'm just really excited for her and her new role. But also just wanted to say, I'm going to talk a little bit about a small business workshop that we conducted last week, and Betsy was really instrumental in contributing to that. I'd like to thank the mayor as well for coming and offering some opening remarks. But the Chamber, Betsy contributed to that and also helped promote that event. So we're really grateful for that partnership as well. So kind of going forward with our plan, some of the themes that we know are going to influence what we're doing. The town needs to generate sales tax revenues to support services and the expected quality of life. We need to attract additional full-time residents to support our businesses. And then we need to attract more visitors to enhance our economic activity, largely because we do have a component of our population that leaves the town for part of the year every year. The town also needs to fill some of our existing commercial space and or redevelop and reuse that space. And so that's really a decision that council will have to weigh in coming years. Some of our retail space just may not be necessary, and there might be a need to bring in other uses that will generate some economic activity. And then we need to maximize the economic impact of our remaining infill parcels and making sure that we generate future tax revenues or bring some new activity that leads to thriving developments. It takes into account the town's desire to attract and retain more working families and professionals. And then one of the themes that I heard from many of you is that we want to build a reputation for being open for business. And to that point, I referenced that small business workshop. We held it at the EVIT campus. We had over 20 people that attended. And the early results from we did a survey is that 93% of the attendees thought that this was a good or excellent program to help them either start or grow their business. Tomorrow, we're going to be holding a tourism stakeholder meeting. So we have about 80 people RSVP'd at this point. And again, trying to bring people into the room, hear what the town can do to help, to get them talking amongst themselves. I know that the Lakeshore The new ownership group is really interested in how they can get involved with some of the other restaurants and attractions here in town. So that's what's really driving that event tomorrow. We're planning to have a public meeting on this plan in November or December and get input from residents. Again, tonight is to kind of hear your final thoughts, so to speak, before we take it to our residents. We're going to plan to have a business roundtable in the spring of next year to get input from our businesses again to see what the town can do. And then one of the things that we're really looking at is familiarization tours. So we're really working with community services, and I thank Rachel and her team for their openness to looking at whether we can really expand the utilization of our community center to bring in more corporate retreats, corporate meetings, small conferences, those kinds of things that might generate additional room nights and generate additional dining and shopping here, especially in the town center. So that's another thing that we're going to be looking at in the future. Just some of the trends affecting Fountain Hills. I'll go through this quickly. I'm sure you all have heard this. Maricopa County is the fastest growing county for 3 years in a row. GPEC has seen solid economic activity. One of the things that I think is encouraging is that they've really seen a growth in high wage jobs. So these are jobs that we think in financial services and healthcare and IT that can support families in Fountain Hills. So that's, I think, encouraging. Arizona's GDP outpacing the U.S. as a whole. One of the themes, I think, for us going forward is healthcare. And that sector really, since the recovery in Phoenix, has grown exponentially. It's grown from 9% to 13% of the total jobs in the region. And just in the first 3 quarters of 2019, healthcare jobs are up 3.7%, while job growth as a whole is up 2.7%, so it's a full point higher. California's environment, I think, is ripe for people to move to Phoenix, and I think these are people that are used to paying a high cost for housing, so I don't think that Fountain Hills' cost of housing is going to be a detriment to them. One of the trends that is happening in the region is there's been a lot of industrial projects in the West Valley, and there's been, it seems like, fewer office projects through GPEC in the last few months. Just kind of a trend that we're seeing. Though I will say we have responded to a couple of projects through GPEC just in the last couple of weeks that were office projects. So that's been encouraging. But in general, the larger projects have been industrial in the West Valley. Some of the strengths of the market, I won't go through all of these, but certainly a safe community, which I think breeds the desire for families to raise their children here. One of the things that we really want to communicate going forward is that really it's a reasonable reverse commute to and from Mesa, Tempe, and Scottsdale. And as you see a lot more jobs being created along the Rio Salado and in East Mesa, we want to get the word out that this is someplace you can live and still have a very reasonable commute. So I'll get to kind of some of the communication efforts that we're hoping to step up, and this will definitely be one of those messages that we're getting out there. Some of the challenges or opportunities, again, lack of population density, that sometimes means that those national retailers and restaurants won't really take a look at Fountain Hills, so we really are dependent upon those small businesses growing. We need additional workforce. We've heard from some of our businesses that in the service industry that they need more of a workforce, and I think that the multifamily projects that have been approved might help with that and make Fountain Hills more affordable. Again, the perceived location, we want to overcome that. And then retail leakage. One of the things that we are seeing is that there's a lot of retail dollars that are going out of the town. So to the extent it's possible, we want to encourage people to shop here in Fountain Hills, and that'll be kind of a focus of some of our efforts. So some of the current projects, I know you probably are all pretty aware of some of these, but kind of getting back to that partnership. So Fountain Hills Medical Center, a couple of those partners that we've brought in to help make that a reality. The Arizona Commerce Authority has discussed some incentives possibly for the medical center because they are creating higher wage jobs. And we've brought in Arizona at Work with them as well to hopefully help them to recruit their workforce. Again, the International Dark Sky Discovery Center, we've been partnering with them or bringing together ASU and that board as well. So we're trying to do everything we can to encourage these projects to go forward. So just to kind of summarize, and I'm not going to go into each of these individually, but really our focus will be attraction, retention and expansion of our existing buildings, supporting entrepreneurial development, and we think that EVIT and the co-working space is a prime asset for that. Tourism, higher education, really looking at the opportunity. I know that's been in the strategic plan for a number of years, and we want to try to make sure that that becomes a reality at some point. Branding and marketing, which I'll talk a little bit about in a minute. And then smart city technology implementation. Again, getting kind of a connected, making sure that the town is connected, which will appeal to more of a millennial workforce as well as resident. And then additional support for the town strategic plan. So in terms of business attraction efforts, these aren't really changing from past years, but I think there'll be more of more of a focus on healthcare. Again, higher education as well, and supporting that effort that's been in the strategic plan for a number of years. Targeted retail efforts, those users that attract more of younger families and professionals, but also looking at the reuse of retail space to bring new activity. So, for example, the Walgreens on Shea, if there's an opportunity for a new use that brings some more activity to that area and supports the existing retail, we would certainly want to explore that. Again, healthcare, the region's highest growth job sector, and so we want to make sure that we leverage our position as part of a larger medical corridor. And then supporting our aging population, making sure that we have the providers that they need as well. On the retention expansion side, we're really kind of looking again at closing that leakage, but also encouraging more tourism and also some shop local campaigns. So we're looking for those partners that will kind of get the Fountain Hills brand out there. Talked a little bit about the EVIT space. We're continuing to partner with the Fountain Hills Young Professionals Group, which is through the chamber, and working with Betsy on that as well. And then on the tourism side, we want to continue our efforts and our partnerships. It really is, the town is dependent on sales tax dollars, so tourism is really important. And then I just want to point out that about 43% of the tourism budget comes from grants from the Office of Tourism, the Fort McDowell, Yavapai Nation, and the Salt River Pima community. So we want to continue some of the things that we've already been doing as far as that, and that the grants were based on some of our spring training advertising, waste management advertising. Again, these people are already here. It's not like we're going out and trying to bring them here. They're here. We want to make sure that Fountain Hills is on their radar for a day trip or even to spend the night or several nights. We're exploring several marketing efforts. One of the new things that we're looking at is possibly Barrett-Jackson and some of the other auto auctions that are here in January that are bringing thousands of people here. We want to see if there's opportunities for partnerships and advertising. We're looking at some additional spring training venues. We recently met with Phoenix Mesa Gateway Airport, and there's some opportunities that are very low cost in terms of getting the town out there to their 1.7 million passengers that come in every year. And so one of the things we're looking at is in baggage claim, they have video monitors where they run city and town videos. So we're looking at being a part of that. And one of the things that's clear about Phoenix Mesa Gateway is of those 1.7 million passengers, their number one destination is Scottsdale. So they're either driving past us or around us, and we want to make sure that they're aware of us and hopefully will come here as well. And then again, I talked a little bit about international opportunities, Canada. Asia is a particularly strong tourism market. Japan, China, and Korea, they all list Arizona as one of their top destinations in the U.S. So we want to the extent possible, get them to think about coming to Fountain Hills. So back to kind of the marketing and branding. We really want to expand upon and refine the town's brand. One of the things that I kind of realized when I got here is that we needed to step up our social media advertising. And again, that kind of gets to that millennial, that young professional workforce. And so we're looking to really step that up. And Jody has a great background in that area, and we're really looking forward to stepping that up. We are going to release a tourism e-newsletter. This will happen after our meeting tomorrow, and it's another goal of mine was to have regular communication with tourism professionals. We are in the process of developing a real estate professional e-newsletter. Again, we want real estate professionals to have facts about Fountain Hills, so when they have people looking at whatever community, we're at least on their radar and they have the facts they need, especially when it comes to a safe community and having good schools. Again, we're going to focus on attracting more working families and professionals, being out there on social media, et cetera. And then one of the things that council actually brought up was the idea of creating a Fountain Hills brand around wellness, recreation, and health. And so we're really exploring that as well. Certainly there's great outdoor recreation, there's world-class healthcare facilities, and so we're really looking at the opportunity to build on that brand as well. So with that, I will take any questions that you might have.
Thank you very much, James. Vice Mayor?
Specifically, how do you get recommendations or tips? How do you get tips from GPEC? I mean, do they specifically look at just ones that would be good for our town, or they send all of them to you? How does that work?
Yeah, so all of the member communities have an opportunity to equally respond to any of the leads and prospects that they have. So they send that out to all the member communities. In some cases, we just don't have the real estate property, the size of buildings that the user needs, but in recent cases, we have had the opportunity to respond to some of the office users.
Thank you.
Councilman?
James, I want to thank you and the 20 members of your staff. I mean, this is an incredible program, an incredible amount of work. I presume you're setting some priorities or you'd have a real problem.
Yeah.
And I want to thank you for the help you've given regarding the Dark Skies Discovery Center and the communication with ASU. Apparently that really is going quite well, so I appreciate the connections you've made there. I want to throw something on the table that's just, if not for discussion now, maybe in the future. But, you know, we had an interesting presentation on intersection and pedestrian safety improvements. Now we have this presentation, we've had others. I find myself wondering if we shouldn't, like on a quarterly basis, have some of these topics at the community center and invite the public. Where, I mean, you had to rush through this because there's so much going on. But, you know, the public doesn't know what we're doing. You know, they'll write, you know, Bob will write an article. Some people will read it. They won't really understand what's going on. And they'll say, they'll write us emails and say, why can't you do anything about those empty storefronts? Council ought to do something. And so I guess I'd ask Grady to think about the possibility of something.
I think that's a great idea because, you know, I think we are probably the biggest victim of not getting word out about the activities, all the positive things that we're doing. I do know that a number of us are all invited to like the men's discussion groups and some other, you know, liberal ladies and some other organizations that we're asked to speak to. But I definitely will work with the staff on that. Also, you know, we do have our own publication now, our own community newsletter, and so Some of the things that has been talked about tonight actually hit that most recent issue. The pedestrian and traffic safety, that was a big topic in this most recent issue. So we are trying to use what tools we do have, but I definitely think we could do more. And I think what you heard also is that the one area that we've been really remiss in is using social media. We're really behind the times on that, and we really need to be using social media more. But I'll get back to the staff, work with them, and then we'll report back to you on how we can start trying to get more, reach out more to our residents. So good ideas.
One other, if I may. GPEC. Have you looked at sort of the history of GPEC in terms of the numbers and types of companies that we've actually looked into and how many have actually come to Fountain Hills?
Yeah.
A few years ago, maybe 3 years ago, we had quite a discussion on whether or not to fund GPEC.
Mhm.
I happen to sit on their board, but that's irrelevant. Whether or not we should fund them, whether or not it's worthwhile. I'd like to get a sense as to whether or not it is worthwhile. I've been to a couple of their board meetings, and frankly, none of it relates to us. And I'd just like to get a sense as to whether or not we're getting enough referrals to follow up on, and of those we follow up on, are we getting any success?
Council member, if I may just, and then if you can follow up on the comments. When I was working in the West Valley, this would come up periodically with some of the West Valley communities because they were always seeing the East Valley. We're always getting the office building projects and some of the higher wage employers and such. And if we got anything, it was like warehousing or things that really didn't really generate a lot for the West Valley. But our ED people always came back to the fact that we got so much value with the marketing and all the other membership values. And if you can just kind of go in, maybe explain what we pay per year and then the value that we get in addition to, we may not always get these leads that land some of these companies and such, but we get a lot of other value. And why don't you kind of describe that?
Yeah, I have not looked specifically at the kind of the trends or how many locates we've received from GPEC. My guess is it's fairly low, but I believe we pay about $11,000 a year. So I think it's one of those things where the rising tide lifts all boats. I think the fact that they have brought 5,000 jobs, I think it was last year, to the region, it just helps all of us. It's really a relatively small amount, and we're at least getting in front of some of these site selectors and real estate brokers and that kind of thing. So we can certainly take a deeper dive at that, but my feeling is that it's a relatively small amount for the overall benefit that we get from them.
One other follow-up, if I may. What you said reminded me. We hired consultants to take a look at our commercial needs, how to attract more commercial entities and companies. They were going out around the country. They were doing research. What has become of that?
So you're absolutely right. We had a 3-year commitment to that, and I believe we just concluded that last year, and it was retail strategies. I thought we had given a report on that, but do you want to?
Sure. Some of the data that we talk about in here about the retail leakage came out of that. It appears that, again, Fountain Hills got in front of some retailers for at least consideration of the town. But again, the study really showed a lot of leakage, and one of the areas was like in home improvement. And so there's about $13 million of leakage that goes out of Fountain Hills. Now, we know we can't close that. We're not likely to have a Home Depot anytime soon. But to the extent we can, encourage our residents to buy the things they can. Restaurants was another one where there's quite a bit of leakage. So, those are some of the things that came out of that report, and it does appear that the consultants were, getting out in front of some of these retailers and presenting opportunities in Fountain Hills. But we could certainly do a deeper presentation on that if
you don't really need to. I voted for that contract, and I frankly am not sure we realized from that work what we were told we were going to see. And it's kind of disappointing. because the money could have been well spent somewhere else. To find out that we have leakage doesn't require, a $50,000 or $70,000 contract. But I just wondered where that stood.
If I may, one of the benefits of this, and it's hard to quantify, but every year, what are the names of these big conferences where they have the big retailers that show up? It's like big ones in Chicago and
International Council of Shopping Centers.
So what would happen was we actually bought access to those where they actually would then try to match up with either retailers or restaurants that fit our profile. And they did provide to us the folks that they did meet with and try to influence to see if they would have an interest coming to our town. So I do think for that, we did get at least that value. We also got a lot of to your point, the stats. But, it's, again, doing nothing or on our own, it's hard to quantify what value we had on that. And if you remember right, to your point, we had quite a bit of debate amongst council members if this was even worth doing.
Yes.
Councilman Tullis?
Thank you. I was against that study and that consultant. And but I'm sitting here listening to this, and I've mentioned Groundhog Day before, and this is kind of how I feel again. I feel that we are talking about the same things, talking about the same potential strategies, talking about the same potential targets, and from my perspective, the economic development, the downtown, filling vacancies, working with the existing businesses, working with the successful businesses here, and strategizing with the Chamber of Commerce to determine why are some businesses in this community thriving and why are some not, I think is really an important component to your position, and getting out there and really making sure that you are a liaison between these businesses, between the town of Fountain Hills, getting through the permitting processes, getting through the approval processes, and working with them to walk them through to make sure, like you say, we are open for business, and that's our philosophy in our community. I'm a little bit confused as to some of the comments I've heard in regards to how we're so behind the times in social media. Over the years, I have witnessed, and I feel that I don't think I'm wrong in this regard, but Rachel and Grace and the awards we've won for our tourism in the town of Fountain Hills, the video production that we have had in the tourism division of the town of Fountain Hills, and the social outreach that we've had. We've had reports in the past years of how much more social connection we've had as a town. So to hear right now we're so far behind is totally opposite of what I have been hearing for the last couple of years, and what a great job and award-winning department we've had with Rachel and Grace. So what else can we do in regards to the social media that we're not doing, that I am unaware that we're not doing, because it seems to me that we're doing a great job. And also with your position, and I think you maybe remember I said this when we met face-to-face, one-on-one with Grady, I think your position is one of a cheerleader for our town, one that you need to be out there and you need to be very, very vocal on how exciting it is to work and live in Fountain Hills and to shop local, so to speak. The events that we have, working with Rachel, bringing people to town, introducing them to our community, events in town such as the Stroll and the Glow, such as the Halloween in the Hills. I heard this year that we had more people come to the Avenue on the Halloween evening from out of town that were introduced to Fountain Hills than ever before. And those are the type of things that I think when we bring people in that organic way to Fountain Hills, they own businesses maybe other places or know people who do and say, hey, you know what, this is a vibrant community with a lot of spirit and we want to move here. I don't see us bringing in any major, I don't personally, I don't want a Home Depot in Fountain Hills. I think Paul's Ace Hardware is the place to go. And if you bring in a Home Depot, or if you bring in a business that's going to compete with our local businesses, I've said this before, it's going to actually, you're going to hurt the local business owners rather than help them. So we have to be careful in growth too. So I don't know, I think we've been doing a great job. I wish you a lot of success. I think what you've targeted and what you've said has been said before, and the implementation and actually making it happen, I'd love to see it. I think you're right on track. So I really hope that we see some traction in a lot of the things that you're suggesting.
Appreciate that. And Mayor, just if I could clarify a couple of things. I wasn't insinuating that we would recruit a Home Depot. I'm just saying that that's where a lot of our home improvement dollars are going, and to the extent it's possible, we want them to shop here in Fountain Hills. The other thing is, I wasn't trying or in any way disparaging what has happened on the tourism side on the social media area. We haven't done anything really on the economic development side. So I believe we have like 9 followers on Facebook and maybe a handful on LinkedIn. And so that's what I was really getting at, is that the town needs to utilize it better, as well as economic development for this messaging that I was talking about. So I in no way meant to disparage what they have done or any of their efforts in the past. So just to clarify that.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. A little follow-up on what Art had to say. I've heard pretty much all of this several times. I look at the plan that recognizes the needs to generate sales tax, bring additional visitors. Every one of these, in my opinion, needs to go away, and we need to take a deep breath, and we need to come back and write down realistic things. Fountain Hills is not open for business. We run more people out of town than we can bring to town, and it's been that way since Fountain Hills became a town. You've got some hurdles, but we're looking at these. It reminds me of the opening scene of Johnny Cash, when Johnny Cash and his 2-piece band is playing the same old song that everybody else recorded, and the recording studio said, you've got to bring something new to us, and you've got your hands full, because we have worked with, let's retain the young families and attract young families, but nobody's doing anything about it. I mean, it's not, I don't know that the town of Fountain Hills, the council certainly doesn't have the ability to do it, and I don't know that the town of Fountain Hills does, but I truly believe that this plan, each item needs to be looked at very carefully, and we need to decide if this is really something we can or can't do. Because this is the same plan that we've looked at now, I don't know, 10 years, maybe? And you've got your hands full. The social media comments, I'm sure glad you cleared that up, because I'm not a social media buff at all, but I thought we were doing a great job. And again, to echo, the awards and the grants that we've received in the last 5 or 6 years go beyond anything we've ever done since we've become a town. So, I mean, we're doing so many things right, and I haven't focused on what I would recommend, but it's the same song that we've heard now for a long time, and it needs to be freshened up.
Councilman?
Just a quick follow-up. I've been hearing for the, 4.5, 5 years I've been on the council, we need more young people in town. Until we solve the housing problem, it ain't gonna happen. I talked to somebody just this weekend who said they'd love to live in Fountain Hills. They don't want to live in Tolleson, but they can't afford to live in Fountain Hills. I don't believe that's gonna change. I don't believe there's anything we can do to make it change. And we keep saying it over and over and over again. It's a wish that isn't gonna happen. And so I don't know what kind of a strategy we could possibly have to entice young families here, unless it's somehow buying land and building lower cost housing, which isn't going to happen. So I guess I'm agreeing with the councilman about as I said, setting priorities, being realistic. There are some things, I mean, I think your overall program is terrific. I don't agree that it's totally the same thing over and over again. I think I saw some new things here that I like, but it's going to be critical that we be clear-eyed about what we really can do and what is just a pipe dream.
Anybody else?
I think we've heard some really good comments from the council, and that's what this was designed for. I know that we're going to be working very closely with the realtor community, because I think part of our issue here is not getting the word out about our excellent school system, and that's one of the things that we have heard in the past is that people talk about all the great schools and bases and things that Scottsdale has to offer, but James has picked up on the fact that he needs to connect and has already made some connections with the real estate community to get that word out. So we're gonna come back, and we've heard loud and clear that you guys like to see some changes. I think some of the things he offered tonight are getting right at that. You heard about the e-newsletters that we're going to be doing both in tourism and also with the realtors, and those are really critical areas. So we appreciate your input and your feedback tonight. Thank you.
The idea of getting in front of people like GPEC and, trying to sort of assess what you get from that, I think I was thinking about that when I took the MAG trip to Calgary, and you could say, well, what did we get out of it? 6 months later, do we have any brand new businesses? But the fact is that the discussions that were had there and the connections, and then you don't even know at the time, but then you go to GPEC, and I go to the mayor's county supervisor meetings there quarterly, and you end up having conversations that are very similar, or meeting people even that know somebody that you spoke to. So this relationship building doesn't, give you an immediate result, but we've been meeting with a few, maybe two. All of this stuff is, not for public, but things happen, but they do happen slowly. Something I thought was interesting from some of the folks in Canada, and then also from somebody from Colorado, said that if you asked them about, Sunridge or one of the other courses in town, they would be like, yeah, we played that, but they had no idea it was in Fountain Hills. But that's information that helps us, because then we know that they're here, we know that they liked it, but they didn't associate it with Fountain Hills. They're just like, yeah, I was at that course. Or someone that I spoke to that didn't know we had lakes in the area. They said, well, they have lake people up in Canada, and this is exactly why they come down here in the wintertime. And so you learn things like this, and then you move forward. The education piece is huge for younger families. You're probably right about any full-scale, changes maybe in the housing, but not necessarily impossible, or the fact that we do have younger families that live in zip codes in Scottsdale that are very pricey, and yet they have younger kids. So that kind of goes with some of the other things you were talking about, how to attract families to come here, because that would help our schools. And then, like Grady mentioned, we have good stories to tell, and partnering with them on marketing is important. One thing I wanted to ask you about with the leakage, though, and you mentioned home, that kind of home improvement stuff, but also some things I don't think we'll maybe be able to compete with. You going to a place where there's 4 different furniture stores there, and you can do that. But I liked what you said, to address it with the things that are realistic, that we can address them. And just last, and Betsy's here, if you were sitting in that studio yesterday with Bill Hines from Copperwind, you would think that we were the most exciting place to come and do business. I don't feel like we're closed to business. I don't feel like we try to set up any sort of stumbling blocks for businesses at all. I think everybody is starting to get on a really good synergy, I always use that word synergy, but catalysts for each other, generating excitement. The Copperwind expansion, we've seen restaurants coming in, we've seen bars coming in. So I think that there's a lot more happening here, and maybe that's part of our job too, to communicate not only with people that we're trying to attract, but with the council and with our staff and with our own people internally to be aware that the reason people like us have lived here for 30-plus years is because it's a pretty wonderful place to live. Art?
Well, no question, it's a beautiful place to live, and we shouldn't be ashamed of the fact that we have a very affluent community, and we shouldn't be, when we talk about young families moving in, I don't think that I'm talking about affordable housing in Fountain Hills could be rents of $1,600 to $1,800 a month, and when you have proposals for apartments for units to be built here that would accommodate that, those are the type of issues that you should be in the forefront of in talking about what that would do to this community and how that would help the community. You have to have balance. And I think when we talk about bringing young families, I think what the message is that we don't want a school district that has declining enrollment numbers, that starts to lose programs, that starts to lose its desire for people to move to Fountain Hills. So those things are all tied together. I've said for a long time that until the downtown is thriving, until the downtown has the amenities that will be balanced, that you have an older generation, a younger generation, that people want to go, and you have that vitality downtown, the money to develop the state trust land and to do what we've talked about, having 1,800 homes out there, $350,000 to $500,000, that's the affordability factor in Fountain Hills for potential families. But that's also for people that are downsizing from $1 million homes in Fountain Hills. We have an incredibly affluent community. I would like to see our downtown the best of the best. And when we're dealing with sales tax revenues as a driving factor for our revenues, we need high dollar items. We need things that are going to sell, that are going to bring in big money, big dollars, and increase the coffers so that we can have beautiful streets, that we can have beautiful amenities. This all ties together. So you do have a big job. You do have a huge department that now you have tourism under you. I think tourism, working with Fort McDowell, Bill Hines, we're not talking about a hotel that's going to be not everyone's going to afford to stay at Copperwind. We're talking about a 5+ star hotel that's going to be one of 2 apparently in the world that's going to be marketed with this Marriott flagship that I understand. We live in the best of the best community in all of Arizona, and that's what the message should be. Bring your business to downtown Fountain Hills. That's the best, and you have the clientele that can support you. That's what I'd like to see.
Councilman?
Well, I might as well chime in too. Thank you, Mayor. I've been working out here since the early 80s, so a lot of these themes I've been hearing for decades. And yeah, you can say some of these themes that presented tonight, we've been hearing a lot, the last 10 years or so. I've also heard, to piggyback on what the mayor said and Grady, there are some programs that are expanding, some new things, so congratulate you on that. And I say carry on because, what else are we going to do? We're not going to give up these efforts. We have to carry on. So, and these are the experts in the field, and I don't have 10 more recommendations to add to this that we can do any better than what the experts and the staff members are educated and schooled in this kind of stuff. So I say we just continue on. We need to, and I think a lot of people also forget some of the obstacles that we have to overcome just because the community is getting to be 50 years old almost, and a lot of the planning concepts that were used back in the late 60s and 70s were applied here, and they things have changed obviously in that amount of time. So we're left with a huge glut of commercial land and space that if we were to draw up a community of Fountain Hills today, wouldn't look that way. And so we have to overcome those things. And like you said, maybe some people will come forward and will reuse some of this commercial land for something else. a lot of our streets are way too wide, and it costs us more money to maintain them and that kind of thing, and they wouldn't have been designed that way today. You know, a lot of people say, well, let's just tax the property owners that have all this vacant commercial space. Well, legally, we can't do that. So all these people don't always appreciate all the obstacles that we need to overcome as a community either. So I say we need to carry on and just do what we can.
Thank you. Yeah, Councilman?
Sorry, I want to pipe in once more. Do you happen to know what the average income is in this town?
I don't have that number.
Well, what is it?
I believe it was 72,000.
Oh, I don't think so. But even if it is, you know, I keep hearing we're a very high-income town. I think that's very misleading. I think there are a lot of people in town who have a lot of money, but we have a lot of people who don't. We have a lot of people on fixed incomes. We have a lot of people who work for the government, for this government. We have school teachers and others. I just don't think we should base a strategy on the fact that we are a very wealthy town. I think that's absolutely the wrong way to go. It doesn't mean we don't have wealth, but it's a question of definition. And we need to know what the statistics are. We need to know what the demographics are. We need to know all of that in order to know what kind of planning we need to do for the future for our community. I felt I had to say that because I keep hearing how wealthy we are.
Councilman Magazine.
Excuse me, I'm not finished.
Okay.
I keep hearing how wealthy we are. And yes, we can go up into the hills and the mountains, and we see multi-million-dollar mansions, and we see all kinds of homes around that are very expensive. But that doesn't speak for everybody. We have lots of garden apartments. We have lots of people who are in multifamily, who are trying to make a living, who are on fixed incomes. And I just think we have to know what we're talking about before we set a strategy.
Mayor, I'd like to answer this question. And this is according to the recent statistics. The average income, median household income of Fountain Hills resident is $72,462 a year. The U.S. average is $53,482.
And you know what? It doesn't tell you anything. It doesn't tell you a thing.
That's what it is.
Councilman?
So I don't want you to misunderstand. I think that this plan just needs to have a fresh new look to it and a realistic look. And I do have some ideas, and I would be glad to sit down with you and go through them. You can say it's open for business, but I see us running more dollars out of town than we bring dollars into the town still today. But I do have some ideas, and I would enjoy setting them.
Any other questions or comments? Thank you so much. Appreciate it. It is, you know. Okay, so our next item, and again, this is a work study, so it's just for discussion, is talking about the public art. Grady?
Yes, Mayor and Council, probably going on several months ago, we've had this item that we've been trying to bring to you, but it's been postponed a few times. There's been a lot of interest on the part of the council to look at our public art program, to make some changes to it. I think what you're going to hear from tonight, I think, is very pleasing because I think the Community Services Director is going to present basically a presentation or give you a presentation that's going to talk about our current public art program and some of the changes that Public Art Committee and she and staff have come up with. We're also going to be seeking from you further direction so that we can come back at a later time and bring to you some action items related to public art programs. So with that, I'll turn it over to Ms. Goodwin.
Thank you. Mayor and Council, we're here tonight. I'm going to actually introduce a number of folks that are here as part of tonight's presentation. We have members of our Public Art Committee as well as our president of the FHCCA, who is actually going to speak first tonight. There's a lot of information to go over. I'm going to try really hard not to be here all night with it and try to get to the nuts and bolts, but there's a lot of background and process that's led to where we are. This program is a quarter of a century old, and has a lot of moving pieces. So I'd like to ask Dory to join me up here to start us off. I'd also like to acknowledge that if you've read through the packet and you've read through the draft of tonight's of the policies and procedures, you'll notice it really is a draft. There's quite a few editing remarks that were going back and forth between staff and public art members, so bear with us if you notice those in your packet. All right. Do you want to give this? Yeah, I can give that out. I'm also going to hand out. I'm also going to hand out one supplemental document. It is a sample of our artwork donation application. You'll hear reference to it in a bit.
Hi.
Hello, Mayor and Council. Thank you for allowing me and the Public Art Committee to be involved with the process of shepherding in a new era, and I do want to specify that it's a new era of public art in Fountain Hills. I want to introduce a couple people. Here with me tonight is Carol, who is our 2019 and 20 co-chair, and Jenny Willigrod, our 2019-20 co-chair and also past president of FHCCA. I am the 2018-19 past co-chair for the Art Committee and this year's president of FHCCA. So I've got a bunch of hats on. Mostly I'm here because Dennis said I had to be. So there's been a history of very strong stewardship over the past 25 years that recently came to an end as dedicated people such as Jerry and Jackie Miles, Sandy Thompson, Roy Nickel, Jean Linzer, Don and Carol Cunningham, and many, many others. After many, 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 many years of a very dedicated service, retired from our committee. We are so very grateful for their service and their persistence in creating what has become one of the most significant art collections, public art collections in the Desert Southwest, and beautifully defines Fountain Hills for everyone who visits and lives here. As you know, I'm a realtor, and I can tell you that that is one of the key selling points when I'm taking people around town, and it's one that they get and they love. There are many accolades to be made about this very dynamic group that came before us. But to all of those accolades, I would add that these very dynamic people were very super efficient and would get things done very efficiently behind the scenes with mountains of hard work. So last year, when there was a transition, we found our committee in a period of assessment and reevaluation. We quickly understood that the old way of doing things would be difficult going forward due to a vacuum of the level of experience and expertise. So, but yet, regardless of the ability to recruit expertise and experience for the future, we realized that we needed a very clear public art process and systems that would be easy for everyone involved. Understandable for the public, easy for future public art committees and members to implement, and it had to be systemized for town staff to manage. In short, we wanted the ability to say, yes, we have a process for that, and we didn't have that in the old documents. It might be important for the public to understand that the Public Art Committee and its processes are a public-private collaboration between the Town of Fountain Hills and the FHCCA, which is the Fountain Hills Cultural and Civic Association, or also known as ilovefountainhills.com. The Town of Fountain Hills is responsible for the Town of Fountain Hills Master Plan Ordinance, and that's what we're talking about tonight. That includes the Percent for Art program and several other programs. There were a bunch of varied documents. The Percent for Art program is an ordinance requiring contribution and collaboration by local developers to participate in the acquisition of public art, either at their site or within the public art program. These programs are very commonplace within communities around the country, requiring commercial developers, not residential, but commercial developers, to contribute to the beauty and cultural heritage of the communities that they build within. I would also add that it also improves the developer's project if they choose to put that art on their site, but they don't have to. They can just contribute to the Public Art Fund, and there can be a piece donated to the collection, and that money, frankly, can also go into the Public Art Fund that helps maintain the rest of the collection. The town also, once art is acquired and dedicated, the town is responsible for the insurance and regular maintenance of the collection, for which a public art fund has been set aside. The cost of maintaining the collection each year is approximately $40,000. And that is the responsibility of the town, and that fund sits with the town. Those funds are set aside from sources that include a general fund allocation, but also private donations. And as I mentioned, some of the developer percent for art contributions. Currently, I believe the fund has a balance of around $87,000. FHCCA's role in this, the Public Art Committee is a committee of FHCCA, and they are involved in the selection, citing, suitability of pieces either donated or acquired. This relationship has been very effective for the public art process. Historically, FHCCA is the entity that collects and raises the funds for the public art collection until a piece is acquired or purchased, since the town doesn't want to be a fundraising mechanism. The layers of FHCCA also provide for a wealth of volunteers with a particular passion for Fountain Hills. Historically, that has also been a great wealth of expertise to choose from among that group as the cultural stewards of our community. So at the Public Art Committee's request last year, the FHCCA dedicated some funds to hire an independent consultant to help us analyze our processes and our recommendations, and that's the ordinance that we were looking at. Her preliminary work led us to understand that we had a lot of work ahead of us. Then in March of this year, we were asked by the Town Council to spend the summer making recommendations to update the Town of Fountain Hills Public Art Master Plan and all related documents. What you have before you is the result of that work. We've tried to reduce redundancies and make the program an easier process for the Public Art Committee and members of the public to understand and to follow. So I'd like to point out just a few key elements that we feel were designed to address the Council's concern. One of those is that it is one simplified document. We blended 3 town documents into one comprehensive ordinance. The next is that we've brought into the whole picture an application. And that application we expect to be filled out by everyone who is wanting to participate in the public art process, whether they're a private individual or a developer. And that information is going to give us a wealth of information to help us decide what we need to decide. That document would include information such as the proposed work of the work of art, including its provenance, its background information on the artist, the copyright information, included materials, which is really important when you're trying to maintain these, and the requirement for maintenance and asset valuation. We've never had that before, and it was just sort of, things were flying around. Another element of this is a donor cash contribution. This we came away from the process with. It was not something we'd ever had in Fountain Hills before. But we looked at best practices of other communities and decided to add the requirement that every private donor must also provide a cash donation of at least 5% of the value of the artwork to be placed into the town's public art fund for future maintenance. It's worth noting that we believe that there should possibly be a premium placed on high-value locations such as Fountain Park. That would also speak to the maintenance requirements that are a little bit extra in Fountain Park because of the waters. Another element of this is town staff involvement. So on page 4 of the document of the new ordinance, in the Public Art Committee definition, you'll see that town staff is now a part of the Public Art Committee. Community Services Director Rachel Goodwin participates in nearly all meetings. Actually, she's participated in all of them, and it's been refreshing to have her there. When needed, additional staff participate, such as the recent example when the Copperwind folks made their preliminary presentation for a proposed installation on their site, which is part of the developer's percent for public art. Public Works Director Justin Welty and Park Superintendent Kevin Snipes were present to get a preview, ask questions, and suggest installment stipulations on that piece. I'm very excited for you to see that piece when it's presented to you next, not tonight, but another time. Because it's a great example of functional art that will be a big benefit to our community, and I commend the Copperwind people, or whatever their name is now, on their effort to do that, and I can't wait for you to see it. Another element is stronger requirement for original art. Again, by simplifying this document, you'll clearly see on page 10 of the document under the title, Not Acceptable Art, that we have featured that only original art is acceptable and that mass-produced art is not acceptable. In addition, we've highlighted that no water can be involved in the sculpture, which has been an ongoing maintenance issue for a number of pieces we already have in the collection. Next is the public art requirement for development. We addressed that, and I'm guessing we have a lot more to address, but this section was incorporated from the previous separate document, but we've also simplified it, making it easier for the staff and the developer to navigate in the process. And again, the application will help us a lot in that. We encourage the council to continue with this program and continue to work with developers to encourage thoughtful, useful, and beautiful art that will benefit the community as well as the developer's project as well. I would point to the sculptures all around Plaza Waterfront as a great example of fun, playful art that would not have been placed there were it not for this program. I would also point out that development art, once placed on a developer's site, is the sole responsibility of the developer to maintain, not the town's. So there is no cost to you of that. You don't have to insure it, you don't have to maintain it. It's their responsibility. We've been given some indications that you want a discussion about that fee, the level of it, the size of it. We're willing to talk about that. Would love to hear your thoughts about that. One other element is something that has never been a part of our ordinance, and that's de-accessioning. In the definitions and in section 3 on page 15, we made accommodations for removal of a piece based on certain conditions that are very clearly defined in the document. We felt that this was necessary as pieces within our collection become aged beyond the ability to repair. And we are currently repairing some items, but they won't go on forever. It might also apply to works that become unsuitable for a number of reasons. But again, we tried to be very specific in the document and not leave too much to chance. We also made accommodation for pieces to be sold in certain circumstances. In this case, any proceeds would go back to the Public Art Fund. This originally came from an idea, just as an aside, that many people like to donate their art to us. And it may not be appropriate in some area of our collection. So, based on an understanding with them right up front, we may choose to sell that piece, and again, that the proceeds go to the Public Art Fund. But we needed some rules around that, and this is probably one area where legal counsel will probably have to look at that a couple times over. The last thing, we had never addressed memorial gifts, and on page 9 we have addressed for the first time memorial gifts per our consultant's suggestions. So going forward, first please understand that this is a working draft before you. I don't think we even anticipated that you would see it in this state. We were looking for one more round of suggestions back from staff, and time got too late and it had to go forward. So there you have it. Subject to council's approval of this proposed document and a mandate, hopefully, that the Public Art Committee will continue our involvement, our next steps are to repopulate our committee with expertise and experience. Just today, we welcome 3 new members to our group, including an architect and a landscape designer. Very pleased to have them on board. We currently also have 2 artists already serving on our committee. In the future, we would also like to add verbiage to this ordinance that allows for the placement of traveling art installations within the community. That can be an interesting way to bring art to our community. And we've come to believe that the collection could benefit from a more cohesive area plan in terms of creating themed areas, and this will be maybe a potential future focus. And again, that work would come from our committee. So in closing, the Public Art Committee has enjoyed the privilege of being involved in discussions about maintenance, often borrowing on the expertise within our group. Monthly, when we meet 9 months a year, there is generally a discussion of pieces that might need special attention, plaques to be replaced, shrubbery or water intrusions on certain pieces. Just today, we also began the process to work with the town to recreate the mural along the wall at Fountain Park near the Low Water Garden. The Public Art Committee continues to be the shepherds of the public art collection in collaboration with the town. the many hours dedicated to the revision of this art master plan ordinance is a great example of the dedication of this group.
All right, so this is where I need to thank the group. They have been instrumental in getting us to where we are tonight so far. It has been a very large undertaking getting all of the moving parts under control. So what I have next is sort of the nuts and bolts, is what I call this next half of the presentation. And then from there, we would love your feedback and your direction on next steps. So now you can turn the lights off if you want to, Liz. All right. All right. So we've done introductions. We have Public Art Committee members, both Carol and Jenny Wilgrad with us. Dory, who just spoke. Our art consultant, Diane Kripe, could not join us tonight. And then myself. So I guess the five of us have been sort of the core group. Let's start big. What do we have right now? Where are we with our art? We have officially 125 pieces. We often get credit for a lot more than that, but the additional pieces, like the pieces over at Plaza Fountainside, the horse in front of Saddle Bronc, a number of those pieces are not part of our actual collection. They are pieces that have been donated, and they are on private property. So while they do contribute to the overall sense of public art, we, as the town, have 125 pieces, and this is where they're all at. How did we get here? Why do we have so much art? Like I said, it's been a 25-year process. In 1994, there was an assessment done, a cultural assessment that came back that said Fountain Hills needed space for art, we needed performance venues, and a leadership body. And that's how this was really born. Over time, it has come to evolve into what we know today. Back in 2006 is when the 1% fund was implemented. So just to give you a little background. Some of the other projects that came out of this vision include our community center, for one. That's where a big place of our location for a lot of our art. The Fountain Park Amphitheater, in terms of a performance venue. The Centennial Circle, which has quite a bit of art, obviously right outside of our library and community center. And then the Avenue, the Fountain Art Nodes. So a lot of this has been in the works for a long time. How did we get the art? Well, it was acquired a lot of ways. A lot of it was private financial donations, whether it was actual money to go out and buy stuff, or folks said, I want to buy that for you. Public fundraising was used as well. And then direct purchases by the Public Art Committee. Once enough funds were raised, they chose the piece of art. So that's kind of how we got all of the different bits and pieces we have. How does the art acquisition process work now? This is what we know it as of today. Essentially, an art donation is offered either from a patron or from an artist, or there's an art project that's been identified. The FHCCA and the Public Art Committee review and recommend or denies acceptance. That's pretty much how it's worked. Once it's been accepted, or if it's been accepted, then the committee considers placement of the art. And then once all of that sort of hashed out, it's when it's made its way to council. If you notice, there's in my mind a big gap here, which is staff. There hasn't been a whole lot of discussion with staff. And over time, there's been concerns that have arisen. I think a lot of them have been presented here at council in different bits and pieces. One is a feeling that we are full. We have enough art. I've heard that lots and lots. I've heard that it wasn't always brought to council, or it was brought as an afterthought, where it was sort of a done deal, and it was just check the box to come to council. Concessions were made to donors or artists without considering the impact. There was, like I said, little to no staff involvement in the planning stages regarding scale, placement, installation, maintenance impacts. And there was a lack of long-range planning for the collection. Other concerns is that there have been side deals brokered without town involvement that became difficult for us to enforce as the owners of the resulting art. Development has slowed. The funds into the Public Art Fund are dwindling. And then a lot of our large developments are taken aback at the value and the cost of when you actually look at what is 1%. So hopefully that covers the concerns, at least to the bulk of what I've heard. I'm sure there might be others. So our job was to figure out how are we going to address these concerns. So this is sort of a bulleted list of what we wanted to highlight within your packet there. We, as the committee talked, there needs to be a reduced focus on acquisition and limited collection growth. The idea that we're full, we don't have a lot of places to put art right now. We're kind of full. So there needs to be a slowdown on that acquisition process. There needs to be stricter guidelines regarding the art donations from private collections. And Dory touched on that, and that's a little bit about the application. There has to be we have to stem that tide because there is a lot of stuff being donated through the kindness of locals. They want to contribute, especially when they downsize, but there's just not always a place to put it. It's not always the right piece to be added to our collection. There are proposed maintenance fees in the new guidelines, as Dory mentioned, specifically to help offset the cost of maintaining the pieces over longevity. One suggestion had been a 5% value of the piece that's being donated, and potentially more if the piece is approved for Fountain Park, because we know that those pieces deteriorate faster, take more maintenance, and more upkeep. The addition of terms of deaccessioning, as we mentioned earlier. And then the idea that we can begin recommendations for possible relocation of existing pieces. That has been a point of contention in the past as well. Other proposed changes are the addition of the staff liaison, as Dory mentioned, increased town input when these art pieces are under review, including both our parks, our public works, engineering, whomever needs to be in the room to discuss those pieces. Established terms and conditions for art memorials, increased communication with development services about the Public Art Fund. There's a lot of left-hand, right-hand sometimes of whether fees are being paid, whether expansions or new developments have they paid it? If it is, what was the total? Are they planning to do art instead? There's just a little bit of a communication barrier there. And then the consideration of a cap on the developer required public art fee. I know that was a idea that was suggested here about potentially not being 1%, but maybe being 1% up to a certain number. So I think that may be a discussion we would like to have, or a recommendation from the council tonight. Additionally, the application process to help streamline and explain things, a refocus on original and one-of-a-kinds, considerations for traveling, and then again, the elimination of water-based. So Dory hit a lot of these highlights for me tonight too. So how would the procedure change? If it's not working right now, what do we need to do to make it work? So essentially the same process starts. There's an art donation that's offered from a patron or an artist, or a project is identified. The donor fills out the application, which must meet all of the criteria before it ever gets considered, before it gets put before the art committee. We really, really need to know this level of information. And a lot of people balk at this level of information. It's 5 pages. It's not easy. But if it's a truly worthwhile endeavor, it's worth it to go through this process. And it's worth it to the town. Once that's done, the Public Art Committee, which now includes the town staff, would review it and recommend acceptance or denial based off of these updated guidelines. Again, if it's accepted, we would review the placement of the art, but again, in the context of town-wide impact, the idea of scale, the idea of installation, of engineering, of is this the right place for the right piece, and have a much broader conversation about that. And then once all of these items are satisfied, it would come to council for review, including its location, before anything moves forward, before communication is directed back to the donor. A lot of this happened back and forth before it ever made to council before. So next steps moving forward, we're looking for your feedback tonight. That's what the work session is for. That way we can address the changes and update the draft and get a final document to you. And then the next steps for us would be to begin work on a comprehensive map for potential art placements, i.e., we don't have a lot of space left in our public facilities. We do know that the Discovery Center, the Astroscience Discovery Center, is coming online here sooner rather than later. I can certainly see that being a place where public art might be appropriate, whether on the exterior, possibly in the interior. The future extension from Centennial Circle, some have called it the Emerald Walk. I don't know if that's what it will remain, but there is an idea that there could be potential art. And that's essentially the piece that goes sort of behind Parkview. And there, Park Place, thank you. And then Fountain Park does have a few limited areas available within it, but we would consider those extremely limited because Fountain Park, again, we are often subject to higher levels of vandalism, much more damage because of the environment out there. So it's just not the ideal place. So at this point, we're open for questions, directions, ideas, thoughts.
Vice Mayor.
I want to commend you guys on all of your hard work. It's very detailed, and I think formalizing all of this has been needed for quite a while. It's very well done. I wanted to ask a question, though. You said something about terms and conditions, and I don't think it means this, but when people do fill out the application and you have put some new restrictions on here, like maybe you might decommission or whatever the word is, some pieces or sell, are they going to get like a list of those types of rules so they know what might happen to the pieces, or be informed somehow about it?
That would be, the intention would be to walk through this process with each donor pretty thoroughly. I think that a lot of folks, don't realize the implications of what they're doing. So we want to make sure that they are up to snuff, up to speed on what could potentially happen, where it could go, what they're agreeing to. So yes, and I think once we get a final draft of the criteria and the policies and procedures, the guidelines that you guys have in your packet tonight, that would be part of the application. It would be one set so that they have all of that information together.
Great job.
Thanks.
Councilman Spelch.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Well, I think you know the question I'm going to ask. That's no secret.
Shoot.
$39,000 out of the general fund. What are your guys' ideas of reducing the amount of money that the town will have to come out of the general fund to maintain these and insure?
So keep in mind that number fluctuates generally between $37,000 to $39,000, roughly almost $40,000 a year. That covers insurance and our annual cleaning and maintenance. That's all that's what that covers. And it can fluctuate based on how much maintenance is actually needed per piece. The idea would be to hopefully create a better funding mechanism with this. So i.e. that 5% that we hope to add on top of a donation goes back into that pot so that we can continually replenish that fund and potentially look at that as an option to help offset the general fund.
Is there a percentage that you guys are thinking about, or as far as reducing that 39 or 36, whatever it is?
I don't know that we got that far, to be honest. I think if we said, if it was hey, we're going to have every donation a 5% value. If you're donating a $100,000 piece, I want a check from you for 5% for $5,000 that's going right back into this fund, because we know at some point your piece is going to need maintenance. And that way we just continue to replenish that. The same thing with the 1% fund from our development fees. Having that contributed into this fund and keeping that mechanism functioning is really what's going to keep this fund alive and hopefully renewing. We also know we get donations on occasion, and bequests and things like that. To continue that, it would be great to continue to, if we could reduce the supplement from the general fund, whether over time, as long as we maintain a balance, as long as we keep a fund balance of certain, and I imagine we can work with David Pock on how we could forecast that into the future.
Alan?
I agree with my colleagues. Excellent job. And you've addressed all of the concerns I've had and that I've heard from others. It's very comprehensive, and I appreciate all the work that's gone into it. A couple of questions. With regard to developers, if developers are going to select a piece, let's say, with the approval of the council, can that piece go on the developer's property?
It can, yep. Right now, the way it is if they choose a piece or they want to design a piece or however they acquire a piece, if it's on their property, it is under their care, as Dory mentioned. It's their responsibility for insurance and maintenance and things like that. If they say, hey, I don't have a place for it, I don't want to do that, we're going to give it to the town to install into a public space, that's a different story.
Well, as part of the criteria, you mentioned town-wide impact.
Mhm.
And let's say a developer says, okay, we've picked a piece. Art committee says, hey, it's a great piece. And they have a courtyard. They stick it in the courtyard, and you really can't see it. The rest of the town can't see it unless they walk into the courtyard. How do you handle that?
I was going to say, I think there are criteria that says where it has to be and how public it has to be.
So the sight line has to be such that the public can actually see it without going through all kinds of gyrations.
Page 11, number 4.
Oh, I'm not going to look it up right now.
It basically says it has to be viewable 24 hours a day by the public.
Perfect, okay. Next question. Talk about the sale of pieces that are donated and the DX or whatever it's called.
Yes.
What happens to the money?
It would go back into the public art fund.
Well,
So-
if I'm a citizen
Mhm.
and I've spent $20,000, $30,000, $40,000, $50,000 on a piece, and you decide to sell it, why does it go back to the art fund? Why wouldn't it come to me?
Well, I say because you donated it.
Well, you donated it based upon certain assumptions, though.
Correct. And and that is, I would say that that's a bit of a sticky area. And I think that that's why we wanted it written into the policies, that there's a potential for that.
And let me tell you, we would take this very seriously. We wouldn't willy-nilly decide to de-access or decommission. I prefer that word. It's a military word, but I understand it a little bit better. We would be very selective on when we would do that. For instance, it may be a piece that may have sharp edges, and we're finding that we're getting injuries from children that might be touching it, or it might be one that ends up being more of a maintenance issue. But keep in mind, these people that donate the sculptures or public art, they're getting a write-off for that. So they should not be getting any kind of money back if we end up having to sell the piece.
Well, you want feedback, and I'll tell you that I have trouble with this. Because let's say that I spend whatever amount of money, I dedicate it to my deceased mother and father with a plaque, and you decide to sell it to whomever wants it. I don't know the answer. I just know I don't like it. And so I'd urge you to at least take a look at it and see if there are options to that.
Yeah, that's a good point. So this is actually some best practices that we've taken from other communities with the help of our consultant. And, there's a couple different things going on here. De-accessioning oftentimes is because a piece has aged to the point it's no longer worth it to try to maintain and repair. That happens a lot. I know that we've got some pieces I expect in the next 5, 10, 15 years, we're going to be looking at that. So is there even any monetary value at that point? There may not be. So the de-accessioning is to be able to take something out of service, decommission. Then there's the opportunity, perhaps, in some cases, to sell pieces. You kind of have to think of those as two different things. And yes, you're right. Somebody made a contribution to us, and there's a loved one to be acknowledged. There's plenty of opportunity in other areas of our art collection for someone to be acknowledged. You're going to be looking at Fountain of Light here, hopefully pretty soon. That's a big area where acknowledgement of the public is going to be a possibility. There's a piece here in front of Town Hall, the big fountain statue. People keep adding plaques to it. There are ways to do that. But the sale of art, for the most part, really has to do with art that's contributed to us. And as the head of this art committee, I can tell you people are calling me all the time, wanting to give us art. We want a way to accept that and to be able to say to them, if it doesn't fit with us, do you mind if we sell it for the good of our collection and put it in the hands of somebody that really wants it and fund the maintenance of our collection? And that is an agreement that we will have with them in their donations in the future.
I just think you need to consider worst case. What's the worst thing that can happen? Somebody calls up, they're all upset, whatever. I just think you need to take a look at it and button it down a bit as to specific what happens under certain circumstances.
Okay, thank you.
Dennis, do you have some?
I do.
Sorry, okay.
Thank you, Mayor.
Sorry.
So does the organization have an idea as to where you'd like to put the cap on the funds from the developer?
I'm a real estate person, and I never negotiate the first round. You tell me.
Well, as we all know, when this was first presented, Brother Caldwell, Jerry Caldwell, and I brought it to the council, and it was going to be 1% of the price of the permit, not 1% of the price of the project. And it got passed as 1% of the price of the project, and for about, oh gosh, more than 10 years, nobody really complained about it. So I said, it's fine with me. When I built my little building, I paid my 1% and didn't whimper. Didn't like it, but I didn't whimper. And then we get into the larger projects. For instance, the Daybreak project is professed to be a total of a $90 million project. I would guess the construction aspect of it will be about 60, which would mean that they would have a $600,000 tag at 1%. And I see that as being very unreasonable. I would think that if we had and I'm going to throw a number out, and I would like everybody to jump in here, because I'm certainly don't want to dictate this, but $100,000 cap, I think, would be reasonable on a total donation.
Can I jump in next? So, Council, Mayor, I've got a couple of thoughts about that. I agree that the value should be based on the permitted value, not the retail value. I'm not sure how that happened either. I wasn't around back then. There's a couple different ways we can do this, but before I suggest a few things, I just want to tell you I had a conversation tonight with Bill Hines at Copperwind and asked him, because they made a beautiful presentation. Again, I can't wait for you to see it. And it's functional art. I mean, they really put a lot of thought into it, and we're all going to love having that piece. And Bill said, I don't mind it. He said other communities require it. Fountain Hills should too. I like contributing to the community. He said, I appreciate the cooperation that we've had in working with the committee, and I'm sure when working with the town as well. And he said, it comes down to, percentages, points, when you're trying to put a project together and value engineer it, and those were his words. But I appreciated the fact that he got it. He understands that what he's creating will be a benefit to his community, and to our community in general. I think that $100,000, depending on the value of a project, is too low. I really do. But that a sliding scale might be appropriate if that wasn't regressive to the smaller guys.
If I may, so I broke down 1% up to $1 million, 0.75% from 1 million to 10 million, and 0.5% for 10 million and up.
Do you mind if we work on that? And we may agree with you, and we may come back to you. Do you mind?
Absolutely. The document that you guys have produced is amazing.
Thank you.
And the work that you have all put into it is greatly appreciated and clearly recognized. But the question was asked, how do you want to handle it? So I thought I would address that. And those are my thoughts. If we do a sliding scale, 1% to $1 million, 0.75%, 1 to 10, 0.5%, 10 and up. Well, that would still put a $600 million or a $60 million project at $300,000.
Thank you. Yeah, something like that I think makes a lot of sense. And you're just faster on your feet with the numbers than I am sitting here. So I think that there are probably several things within the document, and we're looking forward to your feedback, and we'd like to bring you a prettier document back here very soon that's, formatted and ready to go with all of the balance of everything that needs, and it would include that as well. So, thank you.
Thank you.
Councilman Charno?
Yes, thank you, Mayor. Yeah, I like the sliding scale idea. I think that's something worth looking into very much. And then, did we change the 1% calculation then, or is it the old way yet, or is that?
We stayed with the same on that.
I think we get in trouble if we try to go backwards on that 1%.
That can change, okay. Just wanted to ask that.
Doesn't that leave a little bit of area for, isn't there some risk of value judgment there? What if we just went to permit value? That seems to make a lot of sense, because we know what that is, as opposed to retail.
It shows up either way. We get a good sense of that.
Okay, all right.
Yeah, so it's worked beautifully, we know. So I think the sliding scale is a really good way of getting at this issue.
Okay, all right.
But as long as we know what the 1% is based on, and that's what everyone knows that's the most important part.
Right, and it's my understanding is it's just hard costs. It doesn't include engineering or soft costs like engineering, architecture, that kind of stuff. It's purely the true construction cost value.
Correct.
Okay. And then in your research then with the consultant and whatnot, is this the public-private collaboration, is that typical, or is it unique, or
I'm not sure we ever really asked that question. I get the sense that many, it's hard because there aren't too many communities our size that have anything like this, and I think we have that past committee to thank for that. And there was a lot of dedication and, frankly, dollars of their own spent on this collection. But in other communities, I get the sense that it's more like a commission of the town. And we did discuss that, and we have such a good partnership right now, and there are certain things that the Public Art Committee and FHCCA can do, because we can collect the money, hold the money, and then spend the money on the piece. And the town didn't seem to be interested in doing that. It just makes it easy, it's where all the volunteers come from. It just makes it easy for the town.
Yeah, and I'm not necessarily advocating changing it. I just thought if the town had a different idea and a better way to approach it. So I assume, Rachel, between the application and staff involvement along the whole process, that's going to tighten up the whole procedure in terms of, coming here and side deals and that whole thing.
We've had some pretty candid conversations. I mean, there's a lot of, everything was sort of hashed out to the point where some of the frustrations that I was able to share from the staff side about, hey, we wouldn't have put that piece there if you'd asked us. And they said, well, why didn't you ever say anything? Because we never had a voice at the table. So I do believe we have everyone really on the same page now. So yes, I think it will be a much tighter process. And to the point about the public-private partnership, for all intents and purposes, it is somewhat treated like a commission in that there's a staff liaison, there's direction that's given from council. So again, maybe not in name and formality, but in terms of function, I think we function like that pretty well.
If I may, too, just Councilmember Charno, just want to let you know, most of these municipal public art programs are truly the way it was described by Dory, where you have a council-appointed advisory board. But I will tell you, this public-private partnership we have is very unique. And what's great about it is I can tell you, being a municipality, a town, we would never have been able to get and seek donations of either money, and I'm not talking about the 1% requirement, but money for people donating specifically to specific art pieces, or people that have significant valued personal collections that they wish to donate. So this has been really a win-win for both the FHCCA and the town. We've got a beautiful collection that I don't think we would have been able to build as quickly as we have going down the traditional municipal public art collection process. So I just wanted to respond back to that.
Appreciate that. And then just real quickly, one more thing. The money we get from the 1%, that's in the past has been used just for acquisition? Or what's, why the 40,000? And I get the 5% being donated in the future to try to, but explain to me how that worked or is working or is gonna work. I don't understand the dynamics right now, I guess.
So that's really up to the developer. It's up to the developer whether they want their contribution of money to be on their property or just someplace. And there have been projects, I believe the Starbucks project just donated the money, and I believe it just went into the fund. So that's happening. There may be a time when that fund is so big that we want to spend the money on something, and you tell us that. I doubt that'll happen, but it's working just fine. I think the McDonald's might have been the same.
But I guess why my question is why the 40,000 is needed.
The maintenance?
Yes.
Okay.
Sure.
So I don't know what the number is for insurance, but we have an art collection, and an art collection has to be protected and maintained. We have, am I answering the right question?
I think what he's asking, sorry, and Mike, I don't mean to interrupt. Mike, maybe.
I'm sorry, the insurance question, is it 23,000? It's 12,000 a year. And can you just, you do the updates periodically to our insurance company. Can you just share with us what the value of the collection is? Because every year we do an update. It's in the low millions. And so I think it's really, you would not be able to get this kind of insurance that we get. So I'm sorry for interrupting, but.
Is that a separate type of insurance policy? It's not part of the risk pool, or
it is part of the risk pool, and it's basically a rider, and I believe they call that the Marine. So what's really nice about it is Quackers we've had stolen a couple times. They completely replaced that without any deductible on that, is my understanding.
It's gone again. No. At the park?
The little duck.
Oh, it's not installed yet. I think we're still waiting to install it.
Oh, no, it's installed, it's just been moved so that it's not as accessible.
They modeled somewhere else.
To your point, Mike, and I think we're all answering different parts of your question. Previously, the prior group did indicate that said the Public Art Fund was not for insurance and maintenance. It was for acquisitions only. It is only recently, under the new leadership of the Public Art Committee, that we kind of came to a meeting of the minds that said, hey, we really need to allow this money to go back towards the maintenance because our collection is so big and it is becoming more and more aged. That funding needs to be allowed for that purpose.
To be honest, I believe it was always like that in the ordinance, but it was never translated like that. But we looked at it, and I think we even strengthened it a little bit more and said that, hey, we've got a collection. We need to maintain it.
But is there a certain percentage then allocated? Or, I mean, if you only have 87 in there and it's 40 a year, well, and if you don't get any more donations, it's gone in 2 years. So,
The town has really been subsidizing. So we have what's called a Public Art Fund, and any of the developers that contribute 1% historically has gone into that fund, or they put in public art in their project. We do transfers every year to cover the insurance and the cleaning of the pieces into that same fund. So as of today, we have $30-some-odd thousand that went into that fund to cover maintenance and insurance, in addition to that $50-some-odd thousand, which makes the $87,000 in that fund. So I just want to make sure that's clear. So, and in past years, we've had like zero money other than the money we've transferred into it. And I will tell you that I did have a conversation with Mr. Miles about 3 years ago when the council at that time, the direction was they wanted that fund to be covering the insurance and cleaning. And he showed me the policy and it was silent on it. And so he reminded me that it was really intended for acquisitions only. And as the father of that ordinance, I acquiesced to him and I backed off on it at that time.
Councilman?
Then if we are rewriting the ordinance at this time, and if that was in the ordinance, I think that the art committee would owe us $560,000 if I had that up correctly. Can we work on that?
Go for it.
Yeah, go for it. So I think it would only be apropos as long as we're getting the 1% or any portion for the art fund, that the first portion would go toward a year's worth of service of cleaning and insurance for the town.
Makes sense.
And then we will not come back and ask for the $560,000. So, but, you know, when, say for instance, we have 3 projects in the same year, that would be sweet. And we collect 3 different ones. I think that each fund should proportionally go into the cleaning and service fund for future use.
Let me just make a couple clarifications, just for everybody to be on the same page. When a developer chooses, for instance, the Copperwind deal, when a developer chooses to put it on their site, they are responsible for the maintenance. The town does not pay any, and we have not proposed that they take any portion of that back into the fund for maintenance. We all understand that, right?
I've got that.
Okay.
Now, but I'm saying, let's say the $1 million project that's going to bring $10,000, the portion of that $10,000 should come back to the cleaning and insurance portion. So the town isn't having to come up with a full count every time.
Absolutely, that's what it's intended for.
Okay.
So maybe
Yeah.
you could allocate a certain percentage, an exact number of the new money coming in to be allocated. Is that what you're saying,
Well,
Councilman?
I guess
That would be fair.
we haven't defined that because, to be honest with you, we just figured it was going to go back in the fund. I mean, I've been hearing from you all that, there might be.
If I may, I
abundance.
think we're really splitting hairs on here. I think what we're really talking about is something that the finance director and I can come up with a mechanism so that that's handled through the budget process. So I hear what you're saying, and I do think it makes sense that the money just goes into the fund, and then we have a mechanism for allocating it. So I hear what you're saying, and we'll follow up on that.
Per Councilman Spellich's comment, we're spending $35,000 to $40,000, and I feel like the art committee should be able to, or the art fund should be able to help fund that money without taking it all out of our general fund.
Yes.
Are we saying that correctly? Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Anything else? Thank you. Thank you so much for all your
Great
work,
job.
all of you. We really appreciate it. Anything that you have anything to ask of the town manager or anything further?
We're going to
Motion.
close the work study. No, I'm done.
No. Motion to adjourn, anybody? All in favor? Aye. Thank you.